By the time Eileen freed the silver-gray cub from the iron trap, blood stained the forest floor, and 3 rogue wolves had already tried to tear them apart. Then voices crashed through the thornwood. Eileen ran, stumbled, and struck her head against stone. The last thing she heard was a furious howl. When she woke, her wrists were bound, armed shifters surrounded her, and the Alpha King demanded to know why she had been found bleeding beside his injured son. What had Eileen just stepped into? Chapter 1. Good deeds never go unpunished. Eileen's grandmother had never believed that saying. She had believed in fairy tales, in happy endings, and in kindness being answered with kindness. But when you saved the wrong child, in the wrong forest, at the wrong moment, sometimes you discovered that even a good deed could demand a price you were never prepared to pay. Because the Alpha King did not deal in simple gratitude. He dealt in debts, bonds, and ownership, and Eileen was about to learn that saving his dying son might cost her the only life she had ever known, her home, her anonymity, and whatever fragile hope she still carried of escaping the cruelty that had shaped her. Some debts were not paid in gold. Some were paid with pieces of your life. Blood on stone and broken baskets. The morning Eileen's life broke apart began exactly like every other morning. Her sister's laughter rang through the stone cottage, bright and musical, while Eileen knelt on the butcher shop floor, scrubbing dried blood from between the stones. "Careful with that brush, Eileen," Margot called from the doorway. Her stepmother's voice was sweet enough to fool anyone who did not know her. "We wouldn't want you ruining those delicate hands of yours." Margot paused and admired her own perfectly manicured nails. "Oh, wait. Your hands stopped being delicate years ago, didn't they?" Eileen kept her eyes lowered. She had learned long ago that meeting Margot's gaze only invited another insult, another punishment, or something worse, so she concentrated on the stiff bristles scraping the floor and the pink water disappearing into the cracks between the stones. Her hands were rough, calloused, scarred from years of doing work Margot would never allow Vivian to touch, but they were strong, and Eileen had discovered that strength was the only kind of currency she possessed in a house where beauty determined your worth. "Mother, does she have to do that now?" Vivian complained from the other room. Her voice was soft and pleasant, almost as gentle as spring rain. "The smell is making me nauseous, and Lord Aldrich is coming this afternoon." Of course he was. Lord Aldrich of the Southern Plains, with his golden hair, enormous estates, and obvious admiration for Vivian's porcelain face. Everyone in Thornhaven seemed to know he was likely to propose within a month. Everyone except Eileen. Apparently, she had not been important enough to tell. "Eileen." Margot's voice sharpened. The sweetness vanished. "Finish that and go into the forest. We need wild herbs for dinner, silver leaf and moon petal. Don't come back until this basket is full." She shoved a woven basket toward Eileen. There was a hole in the bottom, large enough that carrying herbs in it would be almost impossible. Eileen accepted it without protest. There was no point arguing. Margot had married Eileen's father 8 years earlier, only 6 months after Eileen's mother died from fever. Since then, she had devoted herself to making Eileen's existence as painful as possible. When Thomas Thorne returned from his merchant travels, Margot became the perfect stepmother. Kind, concerned, attentive. But Thomas was away more often than he was home, and whenever he left, Margot's real nature returned like rot beneath fresh paint. "The Thornwood?" Eileen asked softly, although she already knew. "Where else would moonpetal grow, you stupid girl?" Something dark glittered in Margot's eyes. "Unless you're frightened. I've heard the rogues have been active lately, wolves without packs, without rules." She smiled. "But you're clever, aren't you? I'm certain you'll be fine." It was a death sentence disguised as an errand. Everyone in Thornhaven knew the Thornwood was forbidden territory, a dangerous buffer between the human settlements and the lands ruled by the shifter packs. The rogues who roamed there were outcasts, mad wolves. Shifters exiled for crimes terrible enough that ordinary people rarely spoke about them. Some killed humans for sport. Margot knew all of that. She also knew Eileen had no real choice. Refuse, and Margot would beat her. Return without the herbs, and she might spend days locked inside the cellar. Eileen had spent enough time in that dark, rat-infested room to know which danger she preferred. I'll go. She pushed herself upright. Her knees ached from kneeling on stone, but she did not show it. Never let them see weakness. That was another lesson she had learned through bruises. Do try to wear something pretty, Vivian added without lifting her eyes from the embroidery in her lap. Tiny roses covered the white silk she was preparing as a gift for Lord Aldrich. It would be embarrassing if the wolves mistook you for a goblin, though in that old dress I suppose it would be an understandable mistake. Margot and Vivian laughed together. Eileen left without answering. She climbed the narrow staircase to the tiny room she had been given after Vivian demanded the larger bedroom. Calling it a room was generous. There was barely enough space for a straw mattress, a few possessions, and the cracked mirror that had once belonged to Eileen's mother. She stopped in front of it. The face looking back at her had been mocked for so many years that Eileen no longer knew what to think of it. She was not ugly. Not exactly. Her cheekbones were high, her chin narrow, her features too sharp to match the soft beauty Thornhaven preferred. Her eyes were storm gray, and her midnight dark hair refused to behave no matter how carefully she tried to tame it. Nothing like Vivian's golden curls. Margot often said Eileen looked feral, like some wild creature that belonged among the beasts of the forest. Maybe she did. Eileen changed into her least damaged dress, a deep green wool gown that had once belonged to her mother, then pulled on her boots. Before leaving, she slipped a small knife into her belt. She had taken it from the butcher shop the year before. Against a rogue wolf, it would be nearly useless. But nearly useless was still better than nothing. Eileen placed one hand against the cold window and looked toward the forest beyond Thornhaven's stone walls. In autumn, the thornwood was beautiful. Gold, crimson, deep green. But beauty could hide teeth. Eileen had learned that too. Everything beautiful seemed dangerous. Everything except her, apparently. She was neither beautiful nor especially dangerous. The walk to the village gates took about 20 minutes. Eileen crossed the square while merchants shouted over one another and children played around the fountain. People recognized her. The butcher's stepdaughter. The plain one. The girl everyone assumed would never marry. Some villagers watched with pity. Others with contempt. Most simply ignored her. Old Grandmother Hess was selling bread beside the fountain. When Eileen passed, the elderly woman quietly pushed a small roll into her hand. For your journey, child. Eileen looked at her. The forest is hungry today, Grandmother Hess whispered. I can feel it in my bones. Thank you. Eileen tucked the bread into the damaged basket. Grandmother Hess was one of the few people in Thornhaven who remembered Eileen's mother. Who remembered that before grief and Margot, Eileen had once been a girl who laughed easily. The village walls were 15 feet high and generations old, built during the shifter wars that had once spread across the continent. The wars were over now. Technically, humans and shifters existed under an uneasy peace. Neither side fully trusted, but both sides needed. During daylight, Thornhaven's gates remained open. 2 bored-looking guards stood watch. One of them straightened when Eileen approached. You're going into the Thornwood? He looked young, perhaps 19, with nervous eyes. That's not smart. 3 hunters disappeared last week. I need herbs, Eileen said. I'll be careful. Careful won't matter if the rogues catch your scent. He shook his head but moved aside. On your head be it. The Thornwood swallowed Eileen almost immediately. One moment she stood beneath open sunlight. The next, the canopy closed above her so densely that midday became twilight. The air was cooler there. Damp, heavy with moss, decay, and something wild enough to raise the hair along her arms. This was not human land. Different rules governed places like this. Civilization felt thin beneath those ancient trees. Eileen avoided the paths. Paths meant travelers. Travelers attracted rogues. Instead, she pushed through the undergrowth, listening for running water. Her mother had taught her that moon petal grew near streams, while silver leaf preferred rocky ground. The broken basket complicated everything. Twice, Eileen had to stop and use strips torn from her underskirt to create a makeshift lining so the herbs would not fall through the bottom. Margot would notice the missing fabric. There would be punishment, but that was a problem for later. First, she had to survive long enough to go home. Nearly an hour passed before she heard something strange. A sound that did not belong among rustling leaves and chattering squirrels. A whimper. High. Desperate. The sound of something small in terrible pain. Eileen stopped. Every sensible instinct told her to continue walking. Find the herbs. Leave the forest before dark. Do not investigate strange sounds in rogue territory. But her feet would not move. She knew that kind of cry. She had made it herself while locked in Margot's cellar, bruises spreading across her ribs, begging for someone to hear. No one had come. No one had cared. Against every instinct of self-preservation, Eileen followed the whimpering. She found the cub in a clearing roughly 30 yards from where she had been walking. It was tiny. Perhaps 10 weeks old. Its fur was the silver-gray color of storm clouds, and its eyes glowed gold even beneath the dim forest canopy. One hind leg was trapped between iron jaws. The metal teeth had bitten deep into delicate bone. Blood soaked the fur around the wound. The cub whimpered again, broken and terrified. Eileen's heart tightened. Then she realized the cub was not alone. 3 adult wolves prowled around it. Huge. Scarred. Their dirty coats were tangled and matted. Their movements were twitchy, unnatural, and there was no recognizable intelligence or mercy in their eyes. Rogues. One sprang toward the helpless cub and snapped at its exposed throat. The cub screamed. Eileen stopped thinking. If she had thought, she would have remembered that she was human. Small. Untrained. Completely outmatched. Instead, she seized a fallen branch and charged into the clearing. Get away from him! The 3 rogues turned. For one terrible heartbeat, Eileen saw her own death reflected in their eyes. Go! Get out! The largest wolf, a brindled male with a torn ear, exposed teeth almost as long as her fingers. Madness wearing fur. Hunger given a body. But Eileen had learned one useful thing during 8 years beneath Margot's roof. Victims who fought back were less enjoyable to torment. She swung the branch. It struck the brindled rogue across the muzzle. The animal yelped and recoiled, more shocked than wounded. I said go. Something raw tore through Eileen's voice. Years of fear, humiliation, rage she had swallowed until she barely remembered it existed. For a moment, even the rogues hesitated. They circled her instead. Testing, searching for weakness. Eileen kept the branch raised and positioned herself between them and the trapped cub. Her heart slammed against her ribs. Her hands trembled. But she refused to run. Running meant death. If she died here, she would do it standing. The brindled rogue lunged. Eileen swung with everything left inside her. The branch cracked against the side of its skull. The rogue hit the ground hard, whining. The other 2 lost their courage. They backed away with their ears flattened, before turning and crashing through the undergrowth. Eileen remained standing with the branch raised until she could no longer hear them. Then her knees failed. She collapsed to the ground, struggling to breathe. The cub whimpered. Eileen looked toward it. The trap. She forced herself forward on shaking hands and knees. Up close, the cub was even more striking. Silver-gray fur, molten gold eyes, delicate bone structure that suggested an important bloodline. This was not an ordinary wolf. It was a shifter child, young enough that it had not yet learned to take human form. It's all right, Eileen whispered. I'm going to help you. She had no idea whether it understood. The trap was old and brutally heavy. Eileen drew the knife from her belt and worked at the mechanism, trying to pry the release apart. The cub cried softly but stayed almost perfectly still, as though it understood she was trying to free it. 10 exhausting minutes passed. Finally, the mechanism sprang. The cub jerked its mangled leg away and scrambled backward from Eileen. It balanced on 3 legs while blood dripped from the injured one. Storm gray eyes met molten gold. Go home, Eileen whispered. Find your pack. You're young. You'll heal. Footsteps crashed through the trees. Human footsteps. Several voices followed. I saw the rogues come this way. There's blood. Fresh kill. Search the clearing. Eileen froze. Hunters. Or worse, humans who worked with rogue wolves for money. Either possibility was dangerous. A human alone inside the thornwood was already suspicious. A human standing beside an injured shifter child could easily be executed before anyone bothered asking questions. Eileen looked at the cub. Hide. The voices grew closer. Now. She grabbed her basket and ran. She made it perhaps 50 yards before the world tilted. Her vision blurred. Her legs tangled beneath her. Eileen fell. Her head struck a moss-covered stone. Pain exploded behind her eyes, white and violent. Copper filled her mouth. For one confused moment, she wondered whether one of the rogues had bitten her without her noticing, whether venom or poison was moving through her blood. Darkness reached for her. Her final thought was of the cub's golden eyes and the strange certainty that she had just saved something far more important than she understood. Then a howl rolled through the thornwood. Deep, resonant, furious. It sounded like vengeance given a voice. And then there was nothing. Chapter 2. Gold Eyes and Judgment. Eileen woke smelling pine and smoke, with the absolute certainty that she was going to die. Pain throbbed through her skull with every heartbeat. She tried to move. Rope cut into her wrists. Her hands were tied behind her. Her ankles were bound too. Something hard pressed beneath her body. At first she thought it was stone. No, wood, polished cedar, carrying another scent beneath it, something wild and clean she could not identify. Eileen forced her eyes open. The room was enormous, easily 40 feet across, with a vaulted ceiling supported by beams carved from entire trees. High, narrow windows spilled sunlight across the floor. Dust floated through the beams of light like tiny stars. Tapestries covered the walls. Wolves running beneath full moons. Battles between humans and shifters. Forest hunts rendered so vividly, Eileen could almost hear the howling. This was not Thornhaven. This was not any human place she knew. She's awake. The voice came from her left. Female. Cold. Eileen turned her aching head. A woman stood several feet away. Magnificent was the only word Eileen could think of. Nearly 6 feet tall, with silver blonde hair braided almost to her waist. Her pale blue eyes were nearly colorless and held the same predatory awareness Eileen had seen in the cub. She wore silver-studded leather armor. A well-used sword rested at her hip. How merciful of her, another voice drawled. Male this time, heavy with sarcasm. Perhaps she'll be coherent enough to tell us why she was found standing over the crown prince with blood on her hands. Eileen's stomach dropped. The crown prince. The cub. Oh gods. I didn't. Her throat felt like sand. I was saving him. The rogues. Silence. The command snapped through the room. Eileen's mouth closed before she consciously decided to obey. The voice was deep, resonant, saturated with authority. It belonged to someone who expected obedience as naturally as other people expected air. Heavy footsteps approached. Then Eileen saw him, the Alpha King. She had heard stories about King Darius of the Northern Pacts all her life. He had inherited the throne at 19 after his father died in battle. He had united 7 warring packs beneath one banner through political brilliance and terrifying force. Stories claimed he could kill a man with his bare hands in less than 10 seconds. They said his wolf was as large as a horse. Looking at him now, Eileen believed all of it. He stood well over 6 feet, broad enough through the shoulders to seem to fill the room. His hair was midnight black, mostly short except for a longer section falling across his forehead. His face was built from hard lines, high cheekbones, a strong jaw darkened by stubble, and a mouth that appeared to have forgotten how to smile. Then she saw his eyes. Gold. Pure molten gold. Exactly like the cub's. They fixed on Eileen with such intensity that she felt stripped down to every fear she had ever hidden. He wore no elaborate robes, only dark leather trousers and a loose white shirt with the sleeves rolled over scarred, muscular forearms. A silver chain disappeared beneath the collar. There was no crown. He did not need one. Power surrounded him like heat from a forge, and he looked at Eileen as though she were not a person, not even an insect. A problem, one he had not yet decided how to eliminate. Your name. Not a question. Eileen. Her voice barely carried. Eileen Thorne. He repeated it slowly. Eileen Thorne. Of Thornhaven Village. She nodded. How did he know? Had someone searched her belongings? Questioned the village? Darius began circling her. Despite his size, his boots made almost no sound on the polished floor. Eileen felt like prey being inspected, measured, catalogued, judged. She forced herself to breathe. My scouts found you in the thornwood, Darius said, almost conversationally. Somehow that frightened her more than shouting would have. Unconscious, bleeding from a wound to the head. He stopped. And 50 feet away, they found my son, the crown prince of the Northern Pacts, heir to 7 territories and a bloodline more than 1,000 years old. His voice hardened. His leg was nearly severed by an iron trap, and he was whimpering like a common dog. The disgust behind the last phrase was unmistakable. The trap wasn't mine, Eileen said quickly. He was already caught when I found him. Rogues were attacking him, and I... And you what? The Alpha King moved closer. You expect me to believe that you, a human girl who might weigh 100 pounds soaking wet, drove off 3 adult rogue wolves with a stick? Put that way, it sounded absurd. I didn't think, Eileen admitted. There was no point trying to deceive someone who might literally smell a lie. I heard him crying. I couldn't leave him there. Something flashed through Darius's golden eyes. Too fast to understand. Then his expression returned to ice. Commander Lyra. The silver-haired woman stepped forward. What did the trackers find? Rogue scent covered the clearing, Your Majesty. 3 adults, male, all carrying the madness stink. She spoke with precise military calm. The ground shows signs of a struggle, broken branches, disturbed soil, blood from multiple sources. She paused. The prince's blood, rogue blood. Her pale eyes moved to Eileen. And human blood. Hers? She was bleeding before she collapsed. The trap? Old iron, illegal construction. The design is usually used by poachers hunting bears. Judging by the rust, it had been set on that game trail for several days. Lyra's mouth tightened. Someone intended to catch a shifter cub. Her expression darkened. And they intended the cub to suffer. A growl rolled through the room. Low. Animal. Darius's golden irises seemed to burn brighter. For one instant, Eileen saw something ancient staring through his eyes. His wolf. Lethal. Furious. Then he forced it back under control. And the prince's testimony? He cannot shift to speak yet, Lyra said. He's too young. But... She hesitated. Darius looked at her. But what? He refuses to leave her. Silence. When the healers tried to carry him to the infirmary, he bit 3 of them. Then he stood guard beside her unconscious body. His nursemaid finally distracted him with fresh meat, long enough for us to move him. Darius stared at Eileen. She could not tell whether he was searching for truth or guilt. Finally, he spoke. Either you're the finest liar I've ever encountered, or you're a fool. His mouth shifted, almost a smile but not quite. A human woman enters forbidden shifter territory, risks her life for a wolf she doesn't know, and expects no payment or recognition. He leaned slightly closer. Which are you, Eileen Thorne? A liar or a fool? Eileen met his gaze. She knew humans were not supposed to hold direct eye contact with powerful alphas. Everyone knew. But she was exhausted, in pain, terrified past the point where fear could control her. Neither. Darius's expression sharpened. I'm someone who knows what it feels like to cry for help and have nobody come. The answer settled between them. Something in the room changed. Not safer. Just different. The atmosphere no longer felt like the second before an execution. Your Majesty. A young man's voice came from the doorway. The healers have finished examining the prince. He'll recover completely, although the leg will require several weeks. He had auburn hair, warm brown eyes, and military symbols Eileen did not recognize on his leather armor. And he's asking for her. Darius turned. Asking how, Captain Rowan? He can't speak. He brought us here. Rowan's mouth twitched. He limped all the way from the infirmary, leaving blood behind him. His nursemaid is beside herself. He's being remarkably insistent. Darius closed his eyes. He muttered something in a language Eileen did not understand. It sounded suspiciously like a curse. When his eyes opened again, he looked at Eileen differently. Still guarded. But considering. Untie her. Commander Lyra stiffened. Your Majesty, we haven't confirmed. My son is a better judge of character than any tracker. Darius's voice was final. If he trusts her, that is evidence enough. He looked at Lyra. Untie her. Now. Lyra's jaw tightened, but she obeyed. She drew a silver-bladed knife with a bone handle and cut through the ropes binding Eileen's wrists and ankles. Eileen immediately touched the back of her head. Her fingers came away sticky with half-dried blood. Can you stand? Darius asked. Eileen tried. Her legs shook. The room swayed. Still, through pure stubbornness, she reached her feet. Captain Rowan started forward when she stumbled. One glance from Darius stopped him. I'm fine, Eileen said. She was absolutely not fine. You're concussed and likely haven't eaten in 12 hours, Darius said. But if you were foolish enough to fight rogues, I suppose you're foolish enough to stand when you should be lying down. He turned toward the door. Come, my son wants you. Eileen looked at Lyra, whose pale eyes remained suspicious. Then at Rowan, who gave her a small, encouraging nod. She forced her legs to follow the king. Only while walking through the seemingly endless corridors did Eileen fully understand where she was. A palace. And unlike anything she had imagined, the walls appeared to be living wood, shaped instead of cut, threaded with silver veins that caught the light. Doors carried intricate carvings of forests and animals. The chandeliers looked as though someone had frozen moonlight and suspended it from the ceiling. Servants, soldiers, and courtiers stepped aside and bowed whenever Darius passed. Many stared openly at Eileen. Curious, hostile, suspicious. She kept her eyes ahead. You fought them with a branch, Darius said without turning. The rogues? Yes. Yes, Your Majesty. Why didn't you run? Eileen blinked. You had time. They were occupied with my son. You could have escaped. She considered giving him a noble answer. Duty, honor, peace between humans and shifters. But she was too tired for beautiful lies. I thought about it. Darius slowed. For maybe 3 seconds. She swallowed. Then I imagined listening to him scream while I ran away. I realized I'd rather die than carry that sound in my head for the rest of my life. Darius stopped. He turned toward her. Those gold eyes searched her face until Eileen wanted desperately to look away. She did not. "You're either remarkably brave," he said, "or remarkably damaged." A pause. "I haven't decided which. Can't I be both?" The words escaped before Eileen could stop them. Something almost like amusement crossed Darius's face. "Only for an instant. Come." He resumed walking. "Before my son decides to chew through another healer." The infirmary was large and warm, filled with beds covered in soft pillows and furs. Bundles of herbs hung overhead. Lavender mixed with sharper medicinal scents. 3 healers moved between patients. All of them stopped when the king entered. On a bed beside the window lay the cub. He seemed even smaller against the white sheets. Silver-gray fur clung together in places where salve had been applied. His damaged leg was wrapped in bandages smelling of honey and something unfamiliar. Magic, perhaps. Shifters healed quickly. Even after such a serious wound, he might be walking normally within weeks. The moment Ash saw Eileen, his ears lifted. He released a sound somewhere between a whine and a bark and struggled to climb down. A middle-aged healer moved to stop him. Darius lifted one hand. "Let him go, healer Mira." The cub tumbled from the bed and landed awkwardly on 3 legs. Then he limped toward Eileen as quickly as he could. When he reached her, he pushed his head against her legs. The whimper he made now was different. Relieved. Happy. Eileen dropped to her knees without thinking. "Hey." She ran her fingers through his soft fur. "It's okay. You're safe. You're home." The cub licked her face. His tail wagged so hard his entire back end moved. Then he limped toward Darius and sat beside his father's feet. He looked from Darius to Eileen with those intelligent golden eyes, as though delivering a verdict. Darius studied his son. Then Eileen. Then his son again. "It appears," he said slowly, "that I am in your debt, Eileen Thorne." "No debt, Your Majesty," she answered too quickly. Every human knew stories about shifter debts. They were dangerous. "I'm only glad he's safe. That is not how this works." Darius's voice was firm. "You saved the Crown Prince's life. Under our laws and customs, that creates a debt, a bond that must be repaid." Eileen's heart sank. She had heard stories. Humans who saved wolves and received wishes. Humans claimed as mates. Humans bound into service for the rest of their lives. The endings changed. One detail never did. The human rarely got to choose. "I want nothing, Your Majesty, please. Just let me go home." Darkness crossed Darius's expression. "Home." His voice lowered. "To Thornhaven? To the family that deliberately sent you into the Thornwood knowing you might die?" Eileen went still. "How did you?" "We questioned people." Darius's voice became quiet. "We spoke with the gate guards, merchants, neighbors." He watched her carefully. "We know about your stepmother. The impossible errands, the punishments, the cellar." Eileen's breath caught. "We know you were sent into that forest to die." Tears burned behind her eyes. She refused to release them. "It's my home." Her voice came out stubborn. "It's all I have." "Then you have nothing." Darius crouched until their faces were level. For the first time, his expression held something beyond calculation. "If I return you there, nothing is exactly what you'll have." His voice hardened. "Margot will eventually kill you. If not next month, then the month after, you know that." Eileen did. She had always known. Admitting it aloud was different. "What would you have me do?" Her voice finally cracked. "I have nowhere else. No money. No skills except cleaning floors. I can't. You can stay here." The words dropped into the room. Eileen stared. "What?" "Stay in the palace. Under my protection." Darius stood again. "You saved my son's life. The least I can offer in return is a life worth living." "I don't understand." Eileen looked from him to the cub. "You want me to be a servant? I want you safe. What you do after that is your decision. His gaze turned hard. But understand this. If you choose Thornhaven, you return without my protection. And Margot will make certain you never see another autumn. He was right. Eileen hated that he was right. If I stay, what would you expect from me? Nothing but your presence. Darius looked down at his son, now curled near his feet. My son has claimed you as Pack. Eileen's chest tightened. That's rare at his age. It means he trusts you, values you. By our traditions, anyone he claims as Pack comes beneath our protection, whether they understand that protection or not. Pack, the word felt heavy, warm, terrifying. Eileen had never truly belonged anywhere. Margot had made certain she always understood herself as separate, unwanted, other. Now an alpha king was offering her belonging as casually as someone might offer a chair beside a fire. It should have been an obvious decision. I need time. Darius studied her. Until morning. He nodded once. Captain Rowan will take you to guest quarters. You'll receive food, clean clothing, and rest. Tomorrow you will give me your answer. He turned away. The cub struggled to follow on 3 legs. Your Majesty. Darius looked back. Eileen hesitated. What's his name? Your son. I saved him, but I don't even know what to call him. For the first time, genuine warmth entered Darius's eyes. Ash. His voice softened. His name is Ash. Then he left. Eileen remained in the infirmary beside healers who avoided her gaze, facing a choice that somehow did not feel like a choice at all. Chapter 3. Gold Eyes and Judgment. The guest quarters were finer than anywhere Eileen had ever slept. Captain Rowan escorted her through winding halls to a suite in the eastern wing, talking pleasantly the entire way. He discussed the weather, the coming harvest festival, the palace kitchens and their supposedly legendary honey cakes. Eileen suspected he was trying to calm her. It did not work, but she appreciated the attempt. Here we are. Rowan opened a carved door. Not the grandest suite, but comfortable enough. Bath through there. The wardrobe has clothes that should fit you. Ring the bell if you need anything. Eileen entered and stopped. The room was at least 3 times larger than the closet she had called a bedroom in Thornhaven. A huge bed stood against one wall under layers of gray and silver furs. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked miles of forest. A fire burned without anyone tending it. Magic. Everything here seemed touched by it. This is too much. Rowan laughed. It's the smallest guest room we have. You're not displacing anyone. Most of these rooms stay empty until summits. He paused in the doorway. Dinner will arrive in about an hour. Try to rest. You look like you're about to collapse. He disappeared before Eileen could argue. Alone, she walked to the windows and pressed her forehead against the cool glass. Sunset painted the thornwood amber and crimson. From the palace, she could see the forest stretching north for miles, divided in the distance by a thin silver river. Somewhere beyond those trees stood Thornhaven, Margot, Vivian, her father, assuming he had even returned from his travels. Did they know she was alive? Did any of them care? A knock interrupted her thoughts. A young woman entered carrying a tray overflowing with food. She could not have been older than 16. Auburn curls framed a freckled face. Begging your pardon, miss. I'm Petra. I'll be looking after you while you're staying here. She placed the tray down. Is there anything you need? A bath? Fresh bandages for your head? Eileen touched the wound. It had stopped bleeding but still throbbed. A bath would be wonderful. Thank you. Of course. Petra hurried toward the bathing room. I'll start the water. There's healing salve in the wardrobe too. Gray jar, silver lid. His Majesty ordered it especially for you and told us to make sure you use it tonight. The king had personally ordered medicine for her. Eileen had no idea what to do with that fact. She placed it among the many impossible things that had happened since morning and turned to a more immediate concern: food. There was enough on the tray for 3 people. Roasted chicken seasoned with unfamiliar herbs, hot bread, butter, honey-glazed vegetables, a slice of berry pie that made Eileen's mouth water. When had she eaten last? Yesterday morning? Margot had sent her into the forest before lunch. Eileen began eating with the speed of someone accustomed to meals disappearing if she did not finish quickly enough. Years of scarcity defeated manners. Halfway through the tray, she remembered Petra might return, and forced herself to slow down. The bath was almost painfully luxurious. Hot lavender-scented water, soft soap, clean towels rather than the rough cloth she had always used. Petra left the healing salve beside the tub. When Eileen finally climbed out, she rubbed it carefully into the injury on her head. Cool tingling replaced the throbbing pain. Within minutes, the ache softened. The wardrobe contained simple, practical dresses rather than noble gowns, but they were finer than anything Eileen owned. She chose soft gray wool because it reminded her of Ash's fur. After braiding her damp hair, she climbed into bed. Exhaustion filled her bones. Sleep refused to come. Her thoughts moved endlessly through everything that had happened. She had saved a prince, fought 3 rogues, been carried into a shifter palace, questioned by an alpha king whose eyes seemed powerful enough to burn through lies, and now that same king had offered her protection. Tomorrow she had to answer him. The rational decision was obvious. Stay. Accept warmth, food, safety. A future without beatings, starvation, or days inside a cellar. Darius had claimed he wanted nothing from her except her presence. But safety always cost something. Didn't it? What would he eventually expect? What exactly did it mean that Ash had claimed her as Pack? What happened if she violated a shifter custom she did not understand? If she disappointed them? If they decided she was more trouble than she was worth? At least Thornhaven was familiar. She understood Margot's moods. She knew how to make herself invisible. How to survive. Here, she was blind. And uncertainty frightened Eileen almost more than cruelty. A scratching noise came from the door. She sat upright. Night had fallen completely. Only the magical fireplace illuminated the room. Who's there? Scratch. Scratch. More insistent now. Eileen climbed from bed and approached cautiously. She pressed her ear to the wood. A whimper. A familiar one. She opened the door. Ash sat in the corridor. His bandaged leg stuck awkwardly to one side. Golden eyes stared up at her. His tail moved once, tentatively, as though he was unsure she would welcome him. "What are you doing here?" Eileen looked up and down the empty hallway. "Does your father know you're wandering around with a broken leg?" Ash made a quiet chuffing noise. Then he limped directly past her without permission. He crossed the room, curled onto the rug beside the fireplace, lowered his head to his paws, and sighed. Eileen stared. "You can't stay here." "I'm not. This isn't." Ash was already asleep. His sides rose and fell peacefully. Tiny snores escaped his muzzle. One hind leg twitched as though he were running through a dream. Eileen should have returned him. The Crown Prince could not simply camp inside a human guest's room like an abandoned puppy. She should wake him. Find a nursemaid. Do something sensible. Instead, Eileen pulled a pillow from the bed and lay beside him on the rug. Up close, she could see how small he really was. How delicate beneath all that fur. "If the rogues had succeeded, you're going to get me into trouble," she whispered. Her fingers moved gently through his fur. "You understand that, don't you?" Ash's tail thumped once in his sleep. Eileen smiled. She closed her eyes. Only for a moment, she told herself. Just until she decided what to do. She woke to chaos. "I swear to the gods, if that cub has gotten himself killed, I will personally." "Your Majesty, please. I'm sure he's only exploring." "He has a broken leg, Mira. He should not be exploring. He should be resting." "When I find him, I'm going to." The voices were approaching through the hallway. Eileen jerked upright. Her back screamed from sleeping on the floor. Gray morning light entered through the windows. Ash was awake too. His ears flattened. He knew. You, Eileen whispered fiercely, are going to get both of us killed. The door burst open. Darius stood there. His hair was disordered, his shirt half untucked. He looked like a king who had spent hours searching his entire palace. Commander Lyra stood to one side, Captain Rowan to the other. Healer Mira hovered behind them. Every one of them froze. Eileen sat on the floor in yesterday's borrowed dress. Ash lay beside her, as though sleeping in a human woman's room were the most ordinary thing in the world. I can explain, Eileen said quickly. Can you? Darius's tone suggested otherwise. He came to my door last night. I was going to return him, but then he fell asleep, and I didn't want to wake him, and I... She was babbling. Eileen stopped herself. I'm sorry, Your Majesty. I should have taken him back immediately. Darius stared. First at her, then at Ash, who at least had enough sense to appear somewhat ashamed, then back to Eileen. Did he sleep through the night? Eileen blinked. Yes, I think so. No nightmares? No, Your Majesty. No crying? No. She hesitated. He snored a little. Darius closed his eyes. Again, he muttered something in the foreign language she had heard before. When he opened them, exhaustion replaced anger. Ash has not slept through an entire night since his mother died 6 months ago. Eileen stopped breathing for a second. He wakes every few hours crying. We've tried nursemaids, sleeping drafts, even letting him sleep with me. Nothing has worked. The meaning settled over Eileen slowly. This tiny cub had lost his mother. And somehow a human stranger had made him feel safe enough to sleep. I didn't know. Her voice fell. I'm sorry. Don't apologize. Darius dragged a hand through his already ruined hair. If you managed to make him sleep, I should probably be thanking you. Something complicated crossed his face. May I come in? Eileen almost laughed from nerves. It's your palace, Your Majesty. For now, it is your room. He turned. Everyone out. I need to speak with her privately. Lyra clearly wanted to object. One look from Darius stopped her. The others left. Mira gave Eileen a sympathetic glance before closing the door. Darius walked to the window. For a long moment, he stood with his back toward Eileen and Ash. Without the full force of his authority, he looked different. Tired. Not ordinary tired. Bone-deep tired. His mother was killed by rogues. His voice was low. 6 months ago, during a border patrol. Eileen remained silent. She was one of our greatest warriors, second commander of the Northern Guard. His hands closed into fists. My mate, the woman who would have been queen. He stared outside. We were supposed to grow old together. Darius inhaled slowly. The rogues ambushed her patrol. She died protecting her soldiers. She died a hero. I'm sorry. There was nothing else Eileen could say. Ash was 4 months old, too young to understand death, but old enough to understand that his mother never came back. Darius turned. Since then, he's become withdrawn, aggressive whenever anyone tries to comfort him. The healers said grief would ease with time. Pain filled his eyes. It hasn't. He's been getting worse. He looked at Ash. Until yesterday. He woke from surgery and attacked 3 healers because he wanted to find you. Ash had moved closer to Eileen. His head now rested in her lap while he watched his father. I don't understand why he trusts me, Eileen admitted. I'm nobody. Just a human woman from a forgotten village. You saved him. Darius came closer and crouched. More than that. You fought for him when every sensible instinct should have told you to run. His eyes held hers. You saw something suffering, and your first response was to help. Consequences be damned. His voice softened. That isn't nobody, Eileen Thorne. That's someone worth knowing. Heat climbed into Eileen's face. Compliments were unfamiliar. Compliments from kings were worse. I only did what anyone would have done. Anyone didn't. Darius slowly lifted a hand. leaving enough time for her to retreat. Eileen did not. He tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. His fingers were warm, calloused, unexpectedly gentle. And now my son has claimed you, which leaves me in an impossible position. Eileen's heartbeat quickened. What position? The position of a father willing to do almost anything to see his child happy, even if that requires asking impossible things of strangers. His hand fell. I need to change the offer I made yesterday. Here it was. Eileen had known a price would eventually appear. Stay. She stared at him. Not as a guest, not as a servant. He looked at Ash. Stay as his companion. His friend, for lack of a better word. Help him through his grief. Help him sleep. Help him heal. For how long? Until he no longer needs you. Darius's jaw tightened. 6 months, perhaps a year. Then he continued. You will be paid, enough that when you eventually leave, you'll never need to return to Thornhaven. You'll never scrub another butcher's floor, or tolerate another cruel word, because you have nowhere else to go. It was generous. More than generous. It could transform Eileen's life. Still, she hesitated. If I say no, Captain Rowan will escort you back to Thornhaven with enough gold to establish yourself somewhere else. Darius looked directly at her. I will not force you to remain here, Eileen, no matter how badly my son needs you. His gaze moved to Ash. Something inside his expression broke. I've already lost enough. His voice lowered. I will not steal your freedom to lessen my own pain. The honesty hurt more than pressure would have. Eileen looked down at Ash. Golden eyes watched her. She remembered him pressing against her legs. Sleeping through the night for the first time in months. Whimpering faintly inside dreams haunted by a mother who would never return. Then she thought of Thornhaven, Margot's casual cruelty, Vivian's laughter. The cellar. The hunger. The certainty that one day Margot would finally go too far. Then this room. This palace. A grieving king asking for her help. There was only one answer. I'll stay. Ash's ears lifted. Not because of the money. Not because you're offering freedom. Eileen looked at Darius. I'll stay because he needs someone, and I know what it feels like to need someone who never comes. She drew a breath. But I have conditions. Respect flickered across Darius's face. Name them. I want to learn. His brows rose slightly. Everything I can. Reading, writing, mathematics, history, politics. Everything I never had time to learn because I was too busy surviving. Her voice strengthened. If I'm staying here, I want to become more than what I was allowed to be. Done. Darius did not hesitate. What else? When Ash gets better, when he no longer needs me, you let me leave. No debts, no obligations. A clean ending. Done. She hesitated again. Send word to my father. Tell him I'm alive. He travels constantly, but when he returns, I don't want him thinking I'm dead. Darius's expression cooled. The man who married Margot and allowed her to torment you for 8 years. He didn't know. Or didn't want to know. Eileen lowered her eyes. Either way, he's still my father. Please. Darius remained silent long enough that Eileen thought he might refuse. Then he nodded. I'll send word. His voice became sharp. But if he tries to drag you back to Thornhaven, he won't. Eileen was not completely certain. Darius rose. For the first time, his size did not feel threatening. It felt protective. Then we have an agreement. He began listing the terms. Eileen would remain as Ash's companion. Her quarters would be near the royal nursery. Tutors would oversee her education. She would have access to the palace library. She could eat with the household staff or privately. A monthly stipend would be placed in trust until she chose to leave. Darius extended his hand. Eileen looked at it. Then placed hers inside. His hand engulfed hers. Warm. Strong. The promise felt strangely like armor settling around her shoulders. "Welcome to the Northern Pack, Eileen Thorne." His golden eyes held hers. "May you never have cause to regret it." Ash's tail wagged so hard his entire body moved. Eileen looked at him and thought there was little use worrying now. She had made her choice. Now she had to live with it. Chapter 4. Learning to live instead of survive. Eileen's new rooms connected directly to the royal nursery through a door that could be locked from either side. The arrangement lasted less than a day. Ash discovered how to push the door open with his nose, making the lock nearly pointless. Her new quarters were smaller than the guest suite, but far more comfortable than anything she had ever known. Soft gray and forest green decorations reminded Eileen of the Thornwood at dawn. A desk stood beneath the window, already supplied with ink, paper, and books, containing knowledge she had spent her entire life wanting. The bed was smaller too, although still enormous by Eileen's standards. Petra had filled the wardrobe with practical dresses made from durable fabrics. "His Majesty said you'll be working with the young prince," Petra explained while helping her unpack. "Can't do that properly in delicate silk, can you? These are clothes for running, getting dirty, actually living, as though Eileen understood how to do that." The first week disappeared inside adjustment. Ash attached himself to her like another shadow. His injured leg was still healing, but that did not stop him from following her with determined little steps. When Eileen ate, he sat beneath the table. When she slept, he curled on the rug beside her bed. More often, he climbed directly onto the bed. Healer Mira strongly disapproved. "He's a prince," she protested on the third day. "Not a house pet. There are traditions, protocols. He's a child who lost his mother." Eileen stroked Ash's fur. "Protocol can wait until he finishes grieving." Mira studied her. "You're either very wise or very foolish. That seems to be the general opinion." Mira sighed and surrendered. Darius kept his distance. He appeared from time to time to observe Ash's progress. He would pause in a doorway, golden eyes studying Eileen and his son, then give a brief nod before disappearing again. Every visit left Eileen with the strange feeling that she was being tested. She simply did not know for what. Her first tutor arrived on the 5th day. Master Benedict was an elderly, stooped man with kind eyes and fingers permanently stained by ink. He had spent 40 years educating royal children. He arrived carrying enough books to build a small wall. So, he lowered himself into the chair opposite Eileen's desk while Ash slept on her bed. "His Majesty tells me you wish to learn everything." Eileen felt heat in her face. "Where do we begin?" "Reading." She swallowed. "I know letters, but I'm slow. Writing is worse. I can sign my name. Not much beyond that." Eileen waited for the condescension she had seen whenever educated people in Thornhaven discovered how little she knew. Benedict only nodded. "A foundation, then. Excellent. Too many students attempt to run before learning to walk." He placed chalk and a slate on the desk. "Show me everything you know." For 2 hours, Eileen concentrated harder than she could remember concentrating on anything. Benedict was patient, but demanding. He corrected the shape of every letter, made her repeat words, required her to write them again until her hand obeyed her mind. By the end, her fingers cramped and her head hurt. But on the slate was an entire paragraph, uneven, smudged. Still hers. "You learn quickly," Benedict said while gathering his books. "Tomorrow, we'll begin reading comprehension. Tonight, 30 repetitions of each of these letters." He left Eileen with a primer and a sense of accomplishment more satisfying than any meal. Soon the days found a rhythm. Mornings belonged to lessons, reading, writing, basic mathematics that made Eileen's brain ache in entirely unfamiliar ways. Afternoons belonged to Ash. They walked through the palace gardens as his leg improved, played gentle games, read picture books created for shifter cubs who were still learning language. Ash was too young to shift into human form and speak aloud, but his intelligence was obvious. When he wanted a particular book, he pushed it toward Eileen. When he wanted the gardens, he herded her toward the door. He expressed strong opinions through barks, huffs, whines, and pointed looks. Slowly, Eileen learned his language. "You're spoiling him," Commander Lyra spoke from behind them one afternoon. Ash was attempting to drag Eileen toward wildflowers he had decided required investigation. "I'm befriending him," Eileen corrected. "There's a difference." "Is there?" Lyra watched Ash. "He will be king one day. Kings cannot afford softness. He's 5 months old now. At 5 months, he can afford to be whatever he needs to be." Eileen met Lyra's gaze. Grief doesn't care about future crowns. Something shifted in Lyra's face. Almost respect. "You're braver than you look, human. I'm more desperate than brave." Eileen smiled faintly. "There's a difference there too." Lyra's mouth almost smiled in return. Then she walked away. Eileen wondered whether she had unknowingly passed another test. Most palace servants treated her with careful politeness. Petra and Rowan were genuinely kind. Others watched her as though waiting to discover what trick she was playing, what reward she hoped to extract from the king. Eileen ignored them. She knew why she had stayed. On her 9th day, Darius summoned her to his study. The room matched him. Efficient. Masculine. Maps and military reports covered the walls. A massive desk carved from a single tree dominated the space. Darius sat behind it, reading a report that had tightened his jaw. He looked up. "Eileen, sit." She obeyed. It was their first private conversation since they had made their agreement. Ash had followed as usual. He trotted around the desk and sat at his father's feet. "How is he?" Darius asked. "Better. His leg is healing. He barely limps." Eileen looked at Ash. "He's eating properly and sleeping through most nights." She hesitated. "He still cries sometimes when he thinks nobody is listening, but not as often." Pain crossed Darius's face. "And you? What about me? How are you adjusting?" Eileen considered. "I'm learning. Master Benedict says I'm good with languages. Commander Lyra thinks I'm too soft. Healer Mira thinks I'm destroying royal nursery protocol." Darius's mouth moved slightly. "But Ash is happy, so I'm calling that a success." "Lyra said you challenged her over spoiling him." "I said he's grieving and needs gentleness. If that's spoiling him, then yes." Darius leaned back. "You're not what I expected." "What did you expect?" "Someone more pliable." Eileen raised a brow. "Someone grateful enough to never disagree with anything." His mouth twitched. "Instead, I found someone who argues with my military commander and rewrites centuries of nursery tradition." "Should I apologize?" "No." The answer was immediate. Ash needs someone strong enough to defend what he needs. Darius's expression became serious. "Even against me, if necessary." Then he paused. "I received word from your father." Eileen's breath stopped. "Is he?" "He returned to Thornhaven 3 days ago and discovered you missing." Darius's tone chilled. "Margot told him you ran away during the night and were probably killed by wolves." His gold eyes hardened. Apparently she seemed pleased by the possibility. Anger flared through Eileen. Of course Margot had been pleased. One less burden. One less reminder of Thomas's first wife. "I told him you're alive and under my protection." Darius pushed a letter across the desk. This was his reply. Eileen recognized her father's precise merchant handwriting immediately. Her fingers trembled as she unfolded it. Thomas thanked King Darius for informing him that his daughter was alive. He wrote that he was deeply ashamed circumstances in his household had driven Eileen into such danger. He said he had confronted Margot about her treatment of Eileen and had taken steps to make sure such cruelty never happened again. If Eileen was content beneath the king's protection, Thomas would not demand her return. But he wanted her to know that she would always have a home with him if she chose it. He admitted he had failed as a father, and he hoped that someday he might earn her forgiveness. Eileen read the letter once, twice, a third time. She searched for deception. The words felt genuine, formal, awkward, but genuine. Her father had finally seen what Margot had done, 8 years too late. "Do you want to see him?" Darius asked. Eileen folded the letter carefully. Part of her wanted to face Thomas and scream every memory he had failed to notice. Another part remembered the father he had been before Margot. Warm, present, kind. Mostly. Eileen felt tired. Not yet. She swallowed. "Maybe later, when I'm not so angry." "Fair." Darius reclaimed the letter. "For whatever it's worth, I believe he means it. Guilt doesn't erase 8 years. No." Darius rose and walked to the window overlooking the training grounds. "But it can be a beginning." He became quiet. "There's something else you need to know." Eileen's stomach tightened. "A warning?" "Possibly." He looked back. "The court arrives in 2 weeks for the Autumn Council. Nobles from all 7 territories. They'll discuss trade, border disputes, politics." His expression hardened. "And they'll be very interested in you. The human woman who saved the crown prince, and the woman who managed to make him sleep when everyone else failed." Darius nodded. "They'll ask questions, invent theories. Some will treat you kindly, and others will think I'm manipulating you." Eileen finished the thought herself. "Using Ash to gain power." "Yes." "Are you warning me because you believe them?" Darius turned fully. "Or because you want me ready?" "The second." Something almost like admiration entered his gaze. "I know what you are, Eileen Thorne." He stepped closer. "A woman who attacked rogues with a branch because a child was crying. You're not capable of the kind of calculated scheme they'll accuse you of. Then why warn me?" "Because knowing you're innocent and proving it to 200 paranoid nobles are very different problems." He stopped in front of her. "The court can be vicious. They'll investigate your past, your family, every mistake you've ever made." His voice turned colder. "They'll try to break you, because if they can, they'll say you were never strong enough to stand near the crown prince." Eileen's mouth dried. "What do I do?" "Survive." Darius placed a hand on her shoulder. "Don't let them see you break. Don't give them weapons they can use against you." His hand was warm, steady. "And remember that Ash needs you. That matters more than their opinions." "Is this another test?" Eileen looked directly at him. "To see if I'm strong enough?" "No." His fingers tightened slightly. "This is me trying to protect someone my son cares about." His voice lowered. "I've already watched him lose one person he loved. I won't watch him lose another if I can prevent it." The honesty tightened Eileen's throat. She nodded. "Good." Darius released her and became the king again. "Master Benedict will add etiquette and court protocol to your education. Rowan will teach you basic self-defense. Not because I expect you to fight, but because knowing you can defend yourself changes how you carry yourself." He continued. "I'll brief you personally on the nobles, who to avoid, who may become allies. You're doing a lot for someone who's only here to care for your son." Darius's eyes held hers. "You're not only here to care for him." He paused. "He claimed you as pack." Then his voice dropped with absolute certainty. "And I protect my pack, always." Pack. Family, in the shifter sense. Something deeper than blood. Eileen had never belonged to anything before. The feeling was both wonderful and frightening. "I won't disappoint you." "I know." Darius smiled. Only slightly. But the change transformed his face. For one moment, he stopped looking like an exhausted king carrying 7 territories. He looked like a father who had been allowed to hope. "Now go. Ash is falling asleep." Eileen glanced down. Ash's eyelids were drooping. "If he naps now, Darius continued. You'll never settle him tonight. Eileen lifted Ash. He was growing heavier already. He nestled into her arms and sighed. Thank you, Your Majesty. Darius. Eileen looked up. When it's only us, call me Darius. Her eyes widened. Using a king's first name was a privilege reserved for family and intimate friends. I couldn't. You're raising my son. I think you've earned it. His expression softened. Besides, hearing Your Majesty 1,000 times every day becomes exhausting. Eileen smiled despite herself. Darius, then, when we're alone. She carried Ash back to their quarters. 2 weeks until the court arrived. 2 weeks to prepare for people who might try to destroy her. 2 weeks to become someone strong enough to stand beneath their scrutiny. No pressure at all. That evening, after Ash had eaten, played, and finally settled into sleep, Eileen sat at her desk under candlelight. She practiced her letters. 30 of each, exactly as Master Benedict demanded. Then she wrote something different. Words that had been forming since her conversation with Darius. I am Eileen Thorne. I saved a prince. I am learning to read and write. I am becoming more than I was. I am not afraid. Eileen reread the lines. The last sentence was a lie. She was terrified. But perhaps if she wrote it often enough, one day it would become true. Outside the window, the thornwood stretched beneath the stars. Somewhere beyond it waited Thornhaven, Margot, the life Eileen had escaped, her father and the guilt he had finally earned. But here, ink stained her fingers. A wolf cub slept nearby. Books filled her desk. Possibilities spread before her like roads. For the first time, Eileen had a chance to become someone new. She only had to survive long enough to discover who that person was. Chapter 5. Silk Masks and Hidden Daggers. The autumn council arrived like a glittering storm. Eileen stood beside her window watching carriage after carriage roll through the palace gates. Each seemed more extravagant than the one before it. Unknown family crests covered lacquered doors. Nobles stepped down wearing clothing that probably cost more than every building in Thornhaven combined. The courtyard became controlled chaos. Servants rushed for luggage. Stable hands struggled with restless horses. Greetings and commands filled the air. Impressive, isn't it? Captain Rowan stood in the doorway. He had started checking on Eileen every day, supposedly because he needed to deliver reports for Darius. Eileen suspected his real assignment was making sure she had not fled. The council meets twice each year, Rowan explained. Spring and autumn. Every noble important enough to matter tries to attend. How many? Approximately 200 this season, plus servants, guards, attendants, and various people who attach themselves to powerful families. He came beside her. You'll meet most of them tonight. Eileen's stomach sank. Tonight? His Majesty decided it would be easier to get it over with quickly. Rowan smiled sympathetically, like pulling off a bandage. Painfully. Exactly. You'll sit at the high table with the royal household. Nobody will insult you directly while Darius is watching. It's the indirect insults I'm worried about. Eileen had spent 2 weeks preparing. Benedict drilled court etiquette into her until she could recite titles while half asleep. Darius briefed her on every major political figure. Lord Corvain of the Eastern Marches controlled the richest farmland and disliked the crown's growing authority. Lady Selene of the Southern Plains had lost her husband during the same rogue attack that killed Darius's mate. She blamed Darius for failing to send reinforcements. Baron Theron of the Western Reaches had 3 unmarried daughters and obvious ambitions involving the throne. They all want something, Darius had told Eileen. Power, influence, better trade, more territory. They'll use whatever leverage appears. Including Eileen. Watching the nobles below, she felt painfully unprepared. They had been raised in courts. Educated for politics since childhood. Eileen was a butcher's stepdaughter who had only recently learned to write a proper paragraph. You're spiraling. Rowan's voice interrupted her thoughts. I'm being realistic. You're imagining every possible disaster before any of them happen. He gently turned her away from the window. Listen, you saved the crown prince. Half the people below would trade a fortune for the favor you earned accidentally. He smiled. They aren't better than you. They're simply dressed better. That's not insignificant when you're standing beside them. Then we'll fix that too. His grin widened. Petra and the royal seamstress have been working all week. The gown arrived 1 hour before the feast. Petra carried it as though transporting a sacred relic. Wait until you see this. Madame Elise outdid herself. The dress was deep forest green, the exact color of the thornwood in twilight. The silk seemed almost weightless. Silver embroidery curled across the fitted bodice in patterns resembling wolf tracks through trees. The sleeves were elegant. The skirt full enough to move gracefully without becoming impractical. Beautiful without begging for attention. I can't wear this. Eileen barely breathed the words. His Majesty commissioned it personally, Petra said, and Madame Elise will probably kill both of us if you refuse. She pushed Eileen toward a chair. Sit, hair. For the next hour, Eileen endured more preparation than she had experienced in the rest of her life combined. Petra washed and dried her dark hair, then braided it into an intricate design while leaving a few soft strands around her face. She applied subtle cosmetics, not enough to hide Eileen, only enough to emphasize what was already there. Simple silver earrings, a delicate chain at her throat. Finally, Petra allowed her to face the mirror. Eileen almost did not recognize herself. The woman reflected there looked as though she belonged among nobles. Not conventionally beautiful. Her features remained too sharp for that, but striking, composed, confident. There, Petra sounded satisfied. Let someone try calling you a common servant now, a knock announced Rowan. He wore formal military regalia. When he saw Eileen, his eyebrows rose. Well, she became nervous again. Good or bad? Good, he considered. Possibly intimidating. He offered his arm. His Majesty sent me to escort you. Ash is already being cared for by healer Mira. He's still too young for formal dinners. Rowan looked at her. Ready? No. Eileen placed her hand on his arm. But I'm going anyway. The Great Hall was a masterpiece of living architecture. Trees supported the vaulted ceiling, their branches woven together into natural arches. Moonlight chandeliers glowed overhead. Long tables dressed in silver and green filled the hall. Every place setting was more elaborate than anything Eileen had known. And the room was crowded with silk, jewels, power, and carefully manufactured smiles. Every face turned when she entered. The weight of 200 stares pressed against her. Whispers followed. Too soft to understand. Clear enough to judge. Rowan's arm tightened beneath Eileen's fingers. They continued forward. At the far end stood the high table. Darius sat at its center, wearing black formal leather and a silver crown. Commander Lyra sat on one side. An empty seat waited on the other. Eileen's. Other important figures occupied the remaining chairs. An elderly white-haired woman with calculating eyes. A stern middle-aged military man. A younger woman so perfectly beautiful she almost seemed unreal. Darius found Eileen across the room. Something moved in his expression. Surprise. Approval. Perhaps both. He stood. The entire hall became silent. Lady Eileen Thorne, he announced. His voice carried without effort. Savior of Crown Prince Ash, an honored guest of the Northern Pack. Lady Eileen had earned no such title. But nobody corrected an Alpha King. She performed the curtsy Benedict had taught her. Not too deep, not too shallow. Rowan escorted her to the empty chair. Darius remained standing until Eileen sat. Only then did he take his own place, allowing the entire hall to follow. The gesture was deliberate. He had stood for her, waited for her. In one movement, Darius had publicly announced that Eileen mattered. Whether that gave her protection or painted a larger target on her remained uncertain. "You look lovely," he murmured while servants brought the first course. "Madame Elise's work. You knew about the dress." "I commissioned it." Darius glanced around the room. "I told you, I protect my pack." His eyes moved constantly, evaluating the hall like a battlefield. "Ready?" "No." "Good." She looked at him. "Good? It means you're paying attention." Darius rose with his goblet. Silence spread again. He welcomed allies and friends to the Autumn Council. For 2 weeks, he said, the territories would strengthen relationships, settle disputes, negotiate trade, remember those lost, give thanks for the harvest, and plan for the future. The room echoed his toast. Then dinner began. The first course was a delicate, creamy soup. Eileen ate carefully, conscious of every movement. The white-haired woman across from her finally spoke. "Lady Eileen," her voice was stronger than her age suggested. "I am Dowager Lady Helena of the Northern Reaches." She studied Eileen's face. "I knew your mother." Eileen nearly dropped her spoon. "You what?" "Catherine Thorne, Catherine Ashford before her marriage." Helena's gaze sharpened. "A distant cousin of mine, twice removed, but still blood." Eileen stared. "She wrote to me once, many years ago, asking for help." Helena's expression tightened. "I am ashamed to say I did not answer. By the time I decided to contact her, I learned she had died." Eileen struggled to absorb the revelation. Her mother had family connected to shifter territory. Her mother had asked them for help. "I never knew." "Of course not. Catherine knew how to keep secrets." Helena's expression softened slightly. "You look like her. Same eyes, same stubborn chin." She was fierce. A faint smile. "I'm pleased you inherited that." Before Eileen could ask anything else, another voice slipped into the conversation. "How fascinating. Smooth, cold, a human with shifter connections." One wonders whether that explains her eagerness to insert herself into royal affairs. Lady Celine. Eileen recognized her immediately, the beautiful widow whose husband had died alongside Darius's mate. Her smile was sharp enough to cut. "I didn't insert myself anywhere," Eileen replied carefully. "I happened to be in the forest when Prince Ash needed help." "How convenient." Celine's sweetness was poisonous. "And now you live in the palace. You receive an education at the king's expense. You're seated at the high table." Her eyes swept Eileen's gown. Quite an improvement from scrubbing blood off a butcher's floor. Conversations around them faded. Everyone wanted to hear. Darius tightened his hand around his goblet. Before he could intervene, Eileen answered. "You're right." She kept her tone calm. "It is an improvement." Celine's smile widened slightly. "Just as saving a child's life is an improvement over standing aside while other people suffer." The smile disappeared. Eileen continued. "But I suppose every person eventually decides what kind of person they want to be." Silence. The implication was cruel. Celine's husband and Darius's mate had died, and Celine carried her own guilt over that loss. Color vanished from her face, then returned bright red. "How dare you?" "Lady Celine." Darius's voice cut through the hall, steel wrapped in calm. "If you have concerns about Eileen's presence, bring them to me privately." His eyes turned dangerous. "You will not insult my guest at my table." "Is that understood?" Celine lowered her gaze. "Of course, Your Majesty. My apologies." She did not sound apologetic. She sounded furious. Dinner continued. But now the nobles were no longer merely curious. They were calculating, evaluating what Eileen represented, who she supported, how she might be useful. Between courses, people introduced themselves. Some were genuinely kind. Baron Aldrich of the Southern Plains spoke warmly and reminded Eileen of Rowan. Others were transparent. Baroness Meredith spent nearly 10 minutes suggesting that her son might be an excellent match for Eileen's new social position. "I'm not searching for a match," Eileen said politely. "Naturally," Meredith smiled. "But nobody knows what the future contains. You've already risen remarkably far in very little time." Her implication was obvious. Use the king's favor. Marry strategically. Climb. Eileen hated it. By dessert, a rich honey cake she barely tasted, her face hurt from smiling. She had dodged more verbal traps than she could count. Names, alliances, titles, and territorial rivalries crowded her head. Finally, Darius rose. "Thank you all. The council formally begins tomorrow morning in the state chamber. Rest well." The nobles understood the dismissal. They slowly departed, many sending final glances toward Eileen. She remained upright until most were gone. Then she sagged slightly in her chair. "You survived." Approval warmed Darius's tone. "Barely. Barely counts." He offered a hand. "Come, I'll walk you back. We should discuss what happened." Eileen let him pull her upright. Her legs were unsteady from tension rather than exhaustion. They walked in silence through the palace. Darius dismissed the guards who attempted to follow. "Lady Selene will be a problem. She blames you for her husband's death. And herself, probably." Darius's expression darkened. "Grief can make people cruel. I shouldn't have said what I did." Eileen looked down. About people standing by while others suffered. It was cruel too. It was true. Darius glanced toward her. "And truth can be the cruelest weapon available." They continued. "You handled yourself well tonight. I thought I was awful. You were nervous." He smiled faintly. "That means you're sane, but you did not let Selene frighten you. You didn't surrender information you didn't want to surrender, and you didn't retreat when challenged." He shrugged. "For a first appearance at court, that's enough." At Eileen's door, Darius stopped instead of leaving. His expression became troubled. "What?" "Lady Helena." He studied her. "Did you know your mother had connections with the Shifter territories?" "No. I didn't even know Ashford was her maiden name." The Ashfords are an old human family with deep connections to Shifter communities. They've served as intermediaries between our peoples for centuries. Darius's eyes narrowed thoughtfully. "If Catherine contacted Helena, she may have wanted to bring you into that world, give you allies capable of protecting you." Eileen remembered her mother's final months. The fever. Whispered conversations she had been too young to understand. She had only been around 10. She died before she could explain anything. "Then we'll discover it together." Darius lifted his hand. He tucked a loose strand of Eileen's hair behind her ear. The gesture was becoming strangely familiar. "Helena can be trusted. If she claims your family, she means it. That connection may help you." Eileen frowned. "Why does everyone keep speaking about what will help me in the days ahead? What exactly is coming?" Darius's expression changed. "Tomorrow, the council begins formal discussion of the rogue attacks." He lowered his hand. "They're increasing. They aren't random anymore. Someone appears to be organizing the rogues." "An army?" "Possibly." Darius's voice became grim. "And once we discuss that, someone will inevitably ask how Ash ended up inside an illegal trap in the Thornwood." Eileen understood. "They'll investigate." "Yes. They'll want to know if the trap was meant for him." "Exactly." Darius's jaw tightened. "If someone intentionally tried to kill my son, we're no longer dealing only with rogues." His eyes burned. "We're dealing with treason." Eileen swallowed. "And anyone connected to Ash becomes suspicious." Darius held her gaze. "Including you." The words landed heavily. "They'll think I said it. Some will suggest it. Others will defend you." He looked angry at the thought. "Either way, you'll probably be formally questioned more than once." "I was sent into the forest by Margot." Eileen's mind raced. What would nobles think when they heard that she had been desperate enough to betray the crown? How long until the questioning? 3 days. They'll establish the known facts first. Darius placed both hands on her shoulders. Listen carefully. The weight steadied her. Tell the truth. Every part of it, even the humiliating parts. His gaze hardened. Do not protect Margot. Do not protect your father. Don't protect me. Just tell them what happened. Exactly. And if they decide I'm guilty anyway? Darius's expression went completely serious. Then I'll exile the entire council and rule alone. Eileen stared. There was no humor in him. You saved my son. His hands tightened gently. I do not forget that. Neither does my pack. Eileen could barely remember the last time someone had protected her with such certainty. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. Darius released her. The worst part may still be ahead. Then, more gently, rest. Tomorrow we prepare your testimony. He left. Eileen entered her rooms. Ash waited on the bed. His tail began wagging the moment he saw her. He jumped down and pressed against her legs. Somehow he sensed the fear she had hidden all evening. Eileen sank to the floor and wrapped both arms around him. Ash licked her cheek. Patient, certain, offering the uncomplicated comfort only a child could give. I'm scared, Eileen whispered into his fur. Ash huffed softly, as though saying he knew. As though saying he was still there. For that night, it was enough. Chapter 6. The Inquisition. The 3 days before Eileen's testimony passed in a haze of preparation and dread. Darius questioned her relentlessly. He invented every accusation he thought the council might use, forcing her to answer again and again, until the truth came without hesitation. Master Benedict taught her the formal rules of council proceedings. Commander Lyra unexpectedly devoted an entire afternoon to interrogation tactics. They'll try to make you question your own memory, Lyra warned. They'll phrase accusations as though guilt has already been established. Her pale eyes remained serious. Answer only what is asked. Stay with facts. Don't fill silence because you're nervous. Eileen studied her. Why are you helping me? Lyra raised a brow. You didn't trust me when I arrived. No. Lyra paused. But Ash trusts you. Darius trusts you. Then she looked away briefly. And you remind me of my sister. Eileen waited. She was human too, married into a shifter pack. Lyra's mouth tightened. The nobles nearly destroyed her before she learned how to fight them with their own rules. She looked back. I won't let them do the same to you if I can prevent it. Unexpected tears burned Eileen's eyes. Thank you. Survive first. Thank me afterward. Lady Helena visited twice. Each visit brought pieces of Eileen's mother's history. Catherine Ashford had grown up in a human settlement near shifter lands. She trained as a healer and treated members of both species. During one of Thomas Thorne's trading journeys, they met and fell in love. The family opposed it, Helena explained over tea. They hoped Catherine would marry a shifter diplomat and strengthen the Ashford name. Helena smiled sadly. But Catherine always preferred love to duty. Her expression became thoughtful. I sometimes wondered whether she regretted her choice. Thomas was gone so often. She raised you largely alone. Did she regret it? Her letters never said so. Helena placed down her cup. She worried about you. What did she ask from you? Help finding you a future. Training, perhaps. Healing like her. Or diplomacy. Helena's mouth tightened. Catherine knew Thomas would eventually remarry. She feared any second wife might view you as competition for her own children. Eileen's throat tightened. She was right. Yes. Helena looked ashamed, and I should have listened. Eileen reached across and squeezed the older woman's hand. You're listening now. On the morning of her testimony, Petra dressed Eileen in a plain gray gown. No elaborate jewelry, no dramatic hairstyle, nothing that could be interpreted as ambition. She needed to appear exactly as she was. A young woman telling the truth. Ash refused to let her leave without him. He paced around her feet until Darius finally surrendered. "He can sit with you." Darius adjusted his formal crown. "Perhaps it's useful for everyone to remember what this inquiry is truly about. A child who was almost killed." Exactly. The council chamber was circular. No noble occupied a visibly superior position. Rows of seats rose around a central floor. Eileen would stand in the middle, where every face could watch her. It reminded her uncomfortably of pictures Benedict had shown her of ancient arenas where people once died for entertainment. The chamber was full when Eileen entered beside Darius. 200 faces turned. Ash limped beside them, his leg nearly healed. One chair waited in the center. A concession because Eileen was human. Shifters generally remained standing during formal testimony. Darius squeezed her shoulder once. Then he left for the highest tier, where Lyra waited. Ash curled at Eileen's feet. His warm body gave her something solid to feel. Lord Corvain opened the proceedings. He was older, silver-haired, sharp-eyed, and carried himself like someone accustomed to command. "We convened to investigate the circumstances surrounding the attack upon Crown Prince Ash 3 weeks ago." His gaze settled on Eileen. "Lady Eileen Thorne has agreed to testify. All questions will acknowledge the service she rendered in saving the prince's life." The final sentence was clearly aimed toward people like Lady Selene. "Lady Eileen, state your complete name and place of origin for the record." Eileen rose. Her knees felt steadier than expected. "Eileen Catherine Thorne. Thornhaven Village, Southern Marches." "Why were you inside the Thornwood on the day in question? The first real test." Eileen breathed. "My stepmother ordered me to gather herbs. Silver leaf and moon petal. Both grow in the deep forest." Helena spoke from her seat. "Your stepmother knowingly sent you into forbidden territory alone?" "Yes, my lady." "Did she understand the danger?" "Everyone in Thornhaven understands the Thornwood. Children are taught to avoid it." Eileen kept her voice level. But refusing Margot's order meant punishment. Returning without what she demanded meant punishment too. Many of her errands were intentionally impossible. Whispers moved around the chamber. Corvain leaned forward. "You're making a serious allegation. You believe your stepmother deliberately endangered your life." "I'm stating what happened." Eileen carefully chose her words. "Whether her intention was specifically to kill me, or simply to cause suffering, I cannot prove. But the behavior was consistent throughout the 8 years she was married to my father. We'll return to that." Corvain gestured. "Describe what happened in the Thornwood. Leave nothing out." Eileen did. The damaged basket. Searching for herbs. The whimper that drew her from her route. Finding Ash trapped in iron while 3 rogues surrounded him. Then the fight. The branch. The screaming. The moment the rogues finally fled. "You fought 3 adult rogues with a stick?" Baron Theron sounded openly skeptical. "Forgive me, Lady Eileen, but you don't appear built for combat." "I wasn't fighting to defeat them." Eileen looked toward him. "I was trying to survive long enough to become inconvenient." His brows rose. "Rogues are opportunistic. They prefer easy prey. I made myself difficult." Lady Selene leaned forward. "And the trap?" Her blue eyes were cold. "You claim you personally released the prince, yet you carry no injuries suggesting you forced apart an iron trap." The accusation beneath the question was obvious. If Eileen had never handled the mechanism, perhaps she had placed it herself. "I used a knife." Eileen remained calm. "I pried at the release, rather than pulling the jaws open directly. It took approximately 10 minutes. She looked toward Selene. "If the trap was preserved, you'll find scratches along the mechanism from the blade. Do you still have this knife?" "No, I dropped it when I fell and struck my head." Eileen glanced toward Lyra. "Your scouts probably recovered it." Lyra stood. "We did. A knife matching Lady Eileen's description was located near the scene. The blade has scratches consistent with contact against iron. Celine's expression tightened. We also found Eileen's blood on a stone approximately 15 feet from the trap, supporting her account that she ran and fell. Celine sat back. The questioning lasted more than an hour. Had Eileen ever visited the Northern Territories? Number. Did she understand shifter politics before entering the palace? Barely. What relationship did she have with her father? Complicated. Why had she fled after freeing Ash instead of remaining beside him? I heard human voices. Eileen explained the shouting in the forest. They sounded excited about the blood. I didn't know whether they were ordinary hunters or people working with the rogues. Her hands tightened. A human found beside an injured shifter cub would look guilty. I panicked. I thought leaving might protect both of us. Convenient, someone muttered above. Eileen's control cracked. Actually, it was idiotic. Several heads turned. If I'd stayed, maybe I wouldn't have fallen and split my head on a rock. Maybe I could have explained everything before the scouts tied me up and accused me of attacking the child I had just saved. Her voice sharpened. I was frightened. I made a bad decision. That's not convenience. It's panic. The chamber shifted. Several nobles nodded. Even Corvain looked more sympathetic. Then the central question. He leaned forward. Did you know the trapped cub was Crown Prince Ash? No, my lord. Eileen answered immediately. I knew he was a shifter child, and that his features suggested a noble bloodline. I didn't know his identity until I woke inside the palace. Would knowing have changed your actions? No. Corvain studied her. A child in pain is still a child in pain. Whispers followed. This time, they sounded approving. Helena rose. One question. Corvain nodded. Proceed. Helena looked gently at Eileen. You described your stepmother as cruel. For the record, can you provide specific examples? This was the part Eileen had feared most. Admitting everything felt like tearing open old wounds before an audience. But Darius had told her to reveal the truth. All of it. She locked me in the cellar. Eileen's voice became quieter. Sometimes for days. No one moved. Sometimes because I spoke when she didn't want me to. Sometimes because I failed a task. Sometimes for no reason I could understand. She swallowed. She regularly withheld food. She gave me work designed to be impossible, then punished me when I failed. Her throat tightened. She told me every day that I was worthless, unwanted, a burden my father regretted. The council was completely silent now. Even Celine looked uncomfortable. Did Thomas know? Helena asked gently. I don't know. Eileen stared at her hands. He traveled most of the year. When he returned, Margot hid the worst of it. She forced herself to continue. And I never told him. Why? I was afraid. Her voice almost failed. I thought he might accuse me of lying, or believe me and still choose Margot. She looked up. Either way, I thought I would lose. Helena nodded. That is understandable. Abused children often remain silent out of fear or misplaced loyalty. Her eyes moved across the chamber. Silence does not make them responsible for their abuse. The message was obvious. Corvain finally stood. One final question. He looked directly at Eileen. I ask because the council must address it, not because I intend insult. Eileen waited. Was there any person, threat, promise, payment, or motive that could have persuaded you to harm Crown Prince Ash? No, my lord. Her voice was steady. I had never entered the Northern Territories. I knew nobody here. I had no political connections, and no reason to wish harm upon the royal family. She breathed slowly. I was simply in the wrong place at the right moment to save a child's life. Corvain watched her, then nodded. Thank you, Lady Eileen. You may sit. Eileen collapsed into the chair. Only now did her legs begin trembling. Ash immediately climbed into her lap. She buried her fingers in his fur. The council deliberated for 3 hours. Eileen was required to remain. Nobles debated every piece of testimony. Helena defended her. Baron Aldrich defended her. Commander Lyra publicly vouched for her. Others followed Lady Selene. She appears at exactly the necessary moment, Selene argued, saves the crown prince, enters the royal household, and somehow we're expected to accept coincidence? Yes. Darius spoke for the first time. His voice cut through the chamber. Because your alternative requires us to believe she organized rogue attackers, deliberately set a trap that maimed rather than immediately killed my son, entered the Thornwood despite having no knowledge of our territory, and then risked her own life fighting the very rogues supposedly working for her. His expression became cold. That isn't a conspiracy. He paused. That's fantasy. Selene stiffened. Your Majesty is understandably biased. She saved your child. Naturally, you want to believe her. I believe evidence. Darius's eyes flashed. The knife, her blood, the broken basket. Witnesses at Thornhaven's gate confirming that a woman with a history of cruelty sent her into forbidden territory. His voice sharpened. If you ignore evidence because it interferes with your preferred conclusion, Lady Selene, that reveals far more about you than it does about Eileen. Selene's face went white. Eventually Corvain called the vote. All who believe Lady Eileen Thorne's testimony and find no evidence of wrongdoing or conspiracy, stand. Eileen stopped breathing. Helena rose first, then Aldrich. Lyra, Rowan from the military section. Others followed. Dozens, scores. Within half a minute, more than half the chamber stood. Corvain counted. Then spoke. By a vote of 123 to 77, this council finds Lady Eileen Thorne innocent of wrongdoing. Relief struck Eileen so hard, tears almost came. Ash licked her cheek. Her actions in saving Crown Prince Ash are recognized as heroic. She will receive formal honors at tomorrow's ceremony. Eileen finally breathed. However, her relief stopped. Corvain's expression became grave. The trap remains unexplained. The chamber quieted. Someone deliberately placed illegal iron in the Thornwood. The purpose was to harm a shifter and may have specifically been to harm the Crown Prince. He turned toward Lyra. This council orders a complete investigation of rogue activity and any possible assassination conspiracy. Commander Lyra, you have full authority to question anyone necessary. Lyra bowed. Yes, my lord. This session is concluded. The nobles departed. Some offered Eileen sympathetic looks. Others remained suspicious. Selene passed without acknowledging her. Darius descended toward Eileen. You did well. He extended his hand. Eileen took it. Ash jumped from her lap and pressed himself between their legs as though physically trying to keep them together. I thought they were going to condemn me. 77 tried. Darius's hand tightened around hers. But truth carries weight. Even people determined not to believe it can feel the difference. They walked back through the corridors. Several passing nobles bowed to Darius and now nodded respectfully toward Eileen. What happens with the investigation? Lyra traces the trap. Darius's expression darkened. If it belongs to a random poacher, we handle the matter quietly. And if someone tried to kill Ash, then there is a traitor inside the territories. His jaw hardened. And that is far more dangerous. Eileen hesitated. Do you believe it was an assassination attempt? Darius looked at her. My mate died 6 months ago during a rogue attack that should never have succeeded. His voice became cold. My son ended up alone in a trap deep inside forbidden territory where a royal cub should never have wandered. Gold burned inside his eyes. I believe someone wants my bloodline destroyed. Eileen felt cold. Darius continued. But I also believe whoever planned this underestimated you. A faint, dangerous smile touched his mouth. That mistake may eventually destroy them. At her door, he stopped. Lady Helena spoke to me after the vote. Eileen waited. She wants to formally sponsor you under the Ashford family, through the old treaties. What does that mean? Legal protection, the right to use the Ashford name, political connections throughout the territories. Why would she do it? Because you're Catherine's daughter. Because Helena feels guilty for abandoning your mother. Darius gave a slight smile. And because having an Ashford close to the royal household strengthens her family. So politics again. Politics is rarely one thing. Good intentions and personal advantage can coexist. Should I accept? That's your choice. Darius considered. But the Ashford name carries enough influence that attacking you becomes more complicated. He paused. It would also make you less of an outsider. Then, quieter, more permanent. Eileen was not ready to examine the meaning beneath that word. I'll think about it. Good. Darius tucked another strand of hair behind her ear. For whatever it's worth, I'm glad you're here. His voice changed. Ash is healing because of you. He hesitated. And something conflicted passed through his expression. I'm healing too. Before Eileen could answer, he turned and walked away. She remained in the doorway with Ash beside her, and a heart suddenly too full. Petra had prepared dinner and a bath. Eileen ignored both. She collapsed onto the bed. Ash curled beside her. We survived. Ash huffed. Eileen smiled faintly. Together. As sleep approached, she understood something that should have terrified her. She was beginning to belong. To the palace. To Ash. To this pack. To this impossible new life. Whether that belonging would save her or destroy her remained unanswered. Chapter 7. The Honor and the Threat. The court ceremony began at dawn. Golden morning light filled the great hall while Eileen stared at the formal gown Petra had prepared. Deep silver silk shimmered like moonlight over water. Embroidered wolves ran through patterns of trees. The gown was more elaborate than anything Eileen had worn before. His Majesty commissioned it, Petra said while fastening the final button. He said you saved the future of his bloodline. The least he could do was make sure you looked the part when he honors you. I'm not sure I want public honors. Too late. Petra adjusted the silver circlet resting against Eileen's braided hair. Not quite a crown. Still enough to make Eileen uncomfortable. You earned this. Let people see what courage looks like. Ash was already prepared. A small silver collar bearing the royal crest circled his neck. He waited by the door with his tail wagging impatiently, probably more interested in returning to the gardens than attending ceremonies. Rowan arrived in full military uniform. His auburn hair had actually been combed into submission. He smiled when he saw Eileen. You clean up remarkably well, Lady Eileen. I'm not actually a lady. Darius invented that at dinner. About that. Rowan's smile widened. Lady Helena filed the sponsorship documents last night. Eileen stared. What? As of this morning, you're officially Eileen Catherine Ashford Thorne, recognized under the old treaties as a member of House Ashford. He looked amused. So yes, you are actually a lady. I never agreed. You told Helena you needed time. Rowan became sympathetic. Apparently she decided the legal paperwork had to be completed before today's ceremony, so Lady Celine couldn't exploit any loopholes. Eileen covered her face briefly. Helena can be ruthless when she wants something. She means well. So I'm nobility now. Apparently, Eileen could not decide whether to laugh or panic. The great hall was even more crowded than during the welcome feast. Every noble from the Autumn Council attended. So did palace workers, military officers, and what appeared to be half the capital. People filled balconies and lined the walls. A clear path led through the center toward a raised platform. Darius waited there in full royal dress, black leather embossed with silver, the crown of the Northern Pax, a ceremonial sword. He looked exactly like every story Eileen had ever heard about warrior kings. Powerful, dangerous, absolutely in command. His eyes found hers. Warmth flickered inside the gold. The herald called, "Lady Eileen Catherine Ashford Thorne, savior of Crown Prince Ash." Eileen began walking. Ash limped proudly beside her. Whispers followed through the crowd, some approving, some skeptical. Eileen kept looking at Darius. His steady presence anchored her. At the platform she curtsied. Ash sat beside her feet and looked happily at his father. "Lady Eileen." Darius's voice filled the hall. "3 weeks ago, you entered the Thornwood on a fool's errand and emerged having saved a prince." The crowd became perfectly still. "You faced rogue wolves armed with nothing except courage and a broken branch." He looked directly at her. "You freed my son from a trap designed to kill him. Then, you requested no reward, expected no recognition, wanted only to ensure a child's safety." Darius descended from the platform. He stopped close enough for Eileen to see the emotion controlled behind his formal expression. Such selflessness requires more than gratitude. His voice strengthened. "By my authority as Alpha King of the Northern Pacts, I award Eileen Catherine Ashford Thorne the Silver Star of Valor, the highest civilian honor our people bestow. You are recognized as friend to the crown, protector of the realm, and member of this pack in law and truth." Lyra held out a velvet cushion. On it rested a silver 8-pointed star, each point decorated with a tiny diamond. Darius lifted the chain and placed it around Eileen's neck. His fingers brushed her skin. Warmth moved through her unexpectedly. "Wear it proudly," he whispered, so only she could hear. "You earned it." Then he addressed everyone again. "Furthermore, Lady Eileen is granted permanent residence within the Northern Palace, a monthly stipend for life, and access to every resource necessary for her education and future development." His voice became absolute. "She will want for nothing while she remains beneath my protection." Applause filled the hall, real applause. Even several nobles who had voted against Eileen seemed affected by the ceremony. Eileen touched the silver star resting against her chest. "Thank you, Your Majesty." She swallowed. "I don't know what I'm supposed to say." Darius leaned nearer. "Say you'll stay." Eileen looked up. "Say you won't disappear the moment Ash no longer needs you." Before she could answer, Ash barked loudly. Laughter spread through the hall. The cub stood on his hind legs, front paws against Eileen's dress. "I believe someone else has an honor to present," Darius said. Ash made several complicated barks and whines. Then he pulled at Eileen's skirt and limped toward a cushion near the edge of the platform. A tiny circlet rested there, child-sized, roughly woven from silver wire. He had Mira help him, Darius explained. Emotion thickened his voice. 3 days of work. He refused to show anyone until it was finished. Eileen knelt. "He wanted to give you something himself." Ash carefully nudged the little circlet into her hands. It was uneven, clearly created by paws not designed for delicate craftsmanship. But every twisted piece of wire represented effort, care, determination. "It's beautiful." Tears blurred Eileen's eyes. "Thank you, Ash." He licked her face. His entire body moved with his wagging tail. Then Ash lifted his muzzle and howled, a high, pure sound. Joy, belonging, pack. The sound filled the great hall. Lyra answered first, then Rowan, Aldrich, Helena. More shifters joined until finally Darius threw back his head and added a howl deeper than all the others. It sounded powerful, and somehow heartbreaking. The humans watched in stunned silence as an entire pack welcomed one of its own. When the final howl faded, almost everyone in the hall had tears in their eyes. The feast afterward was extravagant even by palace standards. Roasted meats, fresh breads, honeyed fruit, desserts beautiful enough to look like sculpture. Wine flowed freely while musicians played. Eileen returned to the high table wearing the silver star. Ash's handmade circlet remained safely inside her pocket. Nobles approached one after another to congratulate her. Some meant it. Others had clearly decided the newly honored favorite of the king might now be politically useful. You've become quite important. Helena sat beside her. Every noble family possessing an unmarried son has suddenly developed great interest in House Ashford's newest lady. I'm not interested in marriage. Obviously. Amusement sparkled in Helena's eyes. You're too occupied raising the future king and attracting the current one. Heat rushed into Eileen's face. Darius is grateful. I saved his son. We'll see. Helena patted Eileen's hand. I've survived palace politics for 60 years. I know interest when I see it. Eileen tried to object. Helena continued. Between the Silver Star and Ashford's sponsorship, you're now socially equal to much of the nobility. She smiled. Quite a desirable match. I don't want to be desirable. I want to help Ash. Which is precisely why you're desirable. Helena stood. Enjoy yourself tonight. The feast lasted for hours. Eileen danced once with Rowan, who was far more graceful than his soldier's posture suggested. Then with Baron Aldrich, who spent their entire dance talking happily about his grandchildren. Darius remained near the high table. Sometimes he handled official matters. Mostly he watched Eileen. She should have felt uncomfortable beneath that attention. Instead, she felt safe. Near midnight, Eileen escaped to the gardens. Autumn had cooled the night without making it bitter. The sky was clear. Stars glittered across darkness. She found a bench near a fountain. Only then did she allow herself to absorb what had happened. A month earlier, she had scrubbed blood from butcher shop floors while Margot mocked her. Now she had a noble name. A palace residence. A royal medal. It felt unreal. Like somebody else's story. You're spiraling. Darius stepped from the shadows. He had removed his crown. Without it, he looked younger. Less burdened. I can see it in your face. I'm processing. Different thing? Very. Darius sat beside her and stretched his long legs. What are you processing? How strange my life has become. Eileen touched the silver star. A month ago, I was nobody. You were never nobody. His answer was immediate. You lived among people incapable of seeing your value. That's their failure. Eileen looked at him. You keep saying things like that. Because they're true. His gold eyes were intense beneath moonlight. Do you regret staying? No. The certainty surprised Eileen. I'm terrified most days. Overwhelmed. I have no idea what I'm doing. She smiled faintly. But no, I don't regret staying. Good. Darius placed his hand over hers on the bench. Warm, calloused, steady. Because I'd regret losing you. He paused. Both of us would. The words carried more than either acknowledged. Eileen knew she should pull away. A king and his son's companion needed boundaries. But for the first time in her life, Eileen wanted closeness. Wanted belonging. Darius. His thumb moved slowly across her hand. What happens when Ash doesn't need me? Darius listened. When he's healed. When I've done what I came here to do. Then you decide. His answer was gentle. Stay, leave, travel, study, whatever you want. The stipend is permanent. It isn't dependent on Ash. He squeezed her fingers. You're free, Eileen. The word should have been comforting. Instead, freedom frightened her. Freedom meant choices. Choices carried risk. And risk meant she could lose everything she was beginning to love. I don't know how to be free. Eileen stared toward the fountain. I've spent my entire life learning how to survive. Nobody ever taught me how to simply live. Then we'll learn together. Darius's voice softened. You've been teaching Ash how to heal. He looked toward her. Perhaps he can teach you how to live without fear. Before Eileen could answer, raised voices erupted inside the palace. Running footsteps. Military orders. Darius was standing instantly. Every trace of softness vanished. Stay here. Absolutely not. Eileen followed him. They ran inside. Lyra stood in the main corridor surrounded by armed guards. Her face was grim. A torn piece of parchment was clenched in her hand. What happened? Darius demanded. This was left inside the Crown Prince's nursery. Lyra gave him the parchment. It was nailed to his pillow with a silver dagger. Eileen moved closer. The message was written in old, brown blood. The letters were deliberately crude. The cub should have died. The human protector won't save him next time. 7 packs will fall. 1 crown will break. The blood of kings will water the thornwood. This is only the beginning. Below the writing was a symbol. A wolf's head divided down the center. Half black. Half white. Darius became terrifyingly calm. Seal the palace. His voice was quiet. Absolute. Nobody enters or leaves until every chamber has been searched. Double the guards on Ash and Eileen. Find everyone who had access to the nursery tonight. Already underway, Lyra said. Eileen stared at the symbol. What is that? The divided pack. Darius's voice remained cold. Extremists who believe humans and shifters must never mix. They consider peace between our species a weakness that should be purged. They were destroyed 20 years ago during the cleansing wars, Lyra added. Then her face hardened. Or we believed they were. They're back, Eileen whispered. And targeting my family. Darius looked at her. For the first time since Eileen had met him, genuine fear appeared in those golden eyes. Not for himself. For Ash. For her. This changes everything. The council will demand action, possibly war. He touched Eileen's face. And you have become one of the clearest symbols of everything the divided pack hates. Because I'm human. And protected by shifters, accepted as pack. Understanding struck Eileen. They'll target me too. Yes. His jaw tightened. Which means you don't leave my sight until every one of them is found. Your Majesty, a guard shouted down the corridor. We found something else. In Lady Eileen's chambers. They ran. The room had been destroyed. Her desk lay overturned. Books were scattered. Above the bed, written in the same dried blood, was one word. Traitor. Ash stood in the middle of the destruction. His hackles were raised. He growled toward shadows. Then he saw Eileen. He rushed to her, whimpering. She lifted him immediately. Someone had entered her room, touched her possessions, threatened her. Pack what you need. Darius's voice allowed no argument. You're moving into the royal wing, the suite beside mine. Eileen stared at him. Darius, I can't. You can. He turned toward her. And you will. His expression was fierce. If they want you, they'll have to pass through me. Eileen opened her mouth. I have lost enough. Darius stepped closer. I will not lose you too. His voice dropped. Not to extremists. Not to politics. Not because you're too stubborn to accept protection. Then came the declaration with the weight of law. You are pack. You are under my protection. And I protect what is mine. The possessiveness should have frightened Eileen. Instead, she felt safer than she had in years. Okay. Her voice was barely audible. Okay. Within an hour, she moved into rooms twice the size of her previous quarters. A connecting door led directly into Darius's chambers. It could lock from either side. For now, it remained open. Guards stood at every entrance. Ash refused to leave Eileen. Eventually Darius stopped trying to make him. After midnight, Eileen stood at her new window looking toward the dark thornwood. Somewhere beyond the palace waited people who wanted Ash dead, wanted Eileen dead, wanted to destroy everything she had begun to build. But Margot had failed to break her during 8 years of cruelty. 3 rogues had failed to kill her. A hostile council had failed to condemn her. Eileen could survive this too. She had to. Because somewhere beyond that connecting door, Darius was sitting beside his son's bed, watching over Ash with eyes that had already suffered too much loss. And Eileen was beginning to understand that protecting Ash meant more than saving one child. It meant giving his father a reason to hope. That was something worth fighting for. Chapter 8. The Mission No One Should Accept. By morning, the palace had transformed from a place of celebration into a fortress. Boots pounded through corridors. Soldiers shouted orders. Every room carried the tension of approaching war. Eileen had barely slept. Every creaking board and gust against the windows dragged her awake. Ash sensed her fear. Before dawn, he crawled onto her bed and pressed against her, until his steady breathing finally allowed her a few hours of restless sleep. Petra arrived with breakfast and news. Commander Lyra called an emergency war council. She placed down food Eileen had no desire to eat. Military leaders from all 7 territories are coming. People are saying the situation could become a full war if the divided pack has as much support as they fear. What kind of support? Eileen forced herself to eat. Petra lowered her voice. They may have been recruiting secretly for years. She counted possibilities. Rogues who hate the peace treaties. Nobles who consider humans inferior. Humans who blame shifters for their problems. Petra swallowed. Rumors say there could be thousands. Thousands. Eileen's fork stopped. How did anyone fight thousands of enemies who could be standing anywhere? A knock came from the connecting door. Eileen jumped. Darius entered without waiting. He looked exhausted. Battle leathers had replaced royal clothing. His hair was untidy. You need to see something. He led her through his rooms. Eileen caught only quick impressions. A large bed. Maps covering walls. Then they entered a war room. A single enormous wooden table filled the center. Maps were covered in pins and hurried notes. Lyra stood at the head. Rowan waited nearby with 2 military officers Eileen did not know. Helena was there too. All of them looked grim. Lady Eileen, Lyra said. We need your help. My help? I'm not a soldier. No. Lyra pointed toward the map. But you know Thornhaven. Red markers clustered along the southern border. And that's where our investigation leads. Eileen's stomach tightened. Lyra explained. The iron trap that caught Ash had been forged using a specific technique common in the southern marches. Investigators traced the metal to a smith inside Thornhaven. Garrett Blackwood, Lyra said. He claims he sold that batch 3 months ago to a traveling merchant. Eileen already knew before Lyra finished. Thomas Thorne. The room seemed to shift beneath her. No. Darius immediately came beside her. My father wouldn't. We don't believe he necessarily knew, Darius said, but someone used his merchant routes to move material for the divided pack. His expression darkened. Which means Thomas is involved, or somebody close to him is. Margot. The name struck Eileen instantly. Margot, who had sent her into the Thornwood. Margot, who had wanted Eileen gone for years. Margot, who could access Thomas's business records, contacts, and inventory whenever he traveled. My stepmother. Lyra nodded. That's our leading theory. Eileen felt cold. But we need evidence. We need to know whether she's simply a sympathizer moving supplies or an active member of the organization. How? We send someone to Thornhaven. Lyra's pale eyes fixed on Eileen. Someone Margot will not immediately suspect. Eileen understood before Lyra said it. You send me. Absolutely not. Darius's refusal came immediately. That's suicide. Which is why it may work, Lyra replied. If Margot is involved, she'll assume Eileen returned because last night's threat frightened her. Darius's face hardened. You're proposing that I send Eileen directly into the home of a woman who has already tried to get her killed. With protection, Lyra remained calm. Soldiers disguised as merchants. Nearby at all times. No. Your Majesty, we need to know whether the merchant networks have been compromised. If the divided pack is moving weapons and supplies across all 7 territories through ordinary trade, we need to discover how far they've reached before striking. Send spies. Thornhaven is small. Outsiders are noticed. Lyra pointed toward Eileen. She isn't an outsider. Her voice softened. She's the stepdaughter who left, and now returns home frightened. Perhaps ashamed, perhaps hoping to reconcile. A grim smile. Margot will enjoy that. She'll lower her guard. The logic was good. Eileen hated that. How long? Darius looked at her sharply. Eileen, no. She kept her eyes on Lyra. How long would I need to stay? 3 days. 4 at most. Long enough to search the house and observe Margot's contacts. Lyra's expression became serious. I won't pretend it is safe. Rowan will accompany you, along with 2 soldiers posing as merchants. If anything goes wrong, they'll remove you immediately. Eileen swallowed. If I find evidence, what happens to my father? Helena answered. That depends on whether he knowingly assisted them. Her voice remained gentle. If he was manipulated, there will be consequences, but not execution. And if he knew? Helena did not answer. She did not need to. Eileen closed her eyes. Thomas had failed her, ignored things he should have seen. But his letter had sounded sincere. Did she owe him loyalty? Or did she owe the truth to the people who had actually protected her? I'll do it. Darius seized her arm, not painfully, firmly. Eileen. His voice was quiet and dangerous. May I speak with you alone? They stepped into an adjoining room. The door closed. Darius turned. Anger and fear battled across his face. This is insane. I know. You're walking voluntarily into the home of a woman who tried to kill you. A woman who may be working with extremists who now want you dead. He stared at her. You'll smile at her, while secretly searching for evidence. One mistake and you could die. I know. Then why agree? Because someone has to. Eileen's fear turned into frustration. They threatened Ash. They threatened me. They threatened everything you've built. She stepped toward him. If Margot is helping them, if my father's business is involved, I'm the one person who can enter that house without immediately starting a conflict. We can find another method. How long will it take? Darius fell silent. How many threats arrive while we wait? How many people could die? Eileen forced him to meet her gaze. You told me I'm Pack. He watched her. You said Pack means you protect what belongs to you. Her voice strengthened. Then understand this. Pack protects each other. Let me help. Darius's jaw tightened. You're asking me to send you into danger immediately after I finally got you somewhere safe. I'm asking you to trust me. Eileen lowered her voice. Trust that I'm strong enough. He said nothing. You believed I was strong enough when I saved Ash. She held his eyes. Believe I'm strong enough to save myself. For several seconds, Darius did nothing. Then he pulled her into his arms. The embrace was sudden, fierce, almost desperate. Eileen stiffened from surprise. They had barely touched beyond brief gestures. Then she relaxed. If anything happens to you, Darius's voice vibrated against her hair. I will raze Thornhaven to the ground. Eileen almost protested. I will destroy every person responsible. His arms tightened. Do you understand me? Nothing will happen. You don't know that. I'll have Rowan. And I'm harder to kill than I look. Darius pulled back. One hand remained against her cheek. You're also more important than you understand. He paused. To Ash. Then, to this Pack. His thumb moved against her cheekbone. To me. The admission remained between them. Eileen's heartbeat slammed against her ribs. Darius. Don't. He spoke quickly. Don't answer now. His forehead touched hers. Just come back. His breathing was unsteady. Promise me you'll come back. I promise. They remained like that. Not kissing. Closer than they had ever been. Sharing breath. Fear. and something dangerously close to hope. Finally, Darius released her. The king returned to his face. We prepare today. You leave at dawn. So soon? The longer we wait, the more time they have to destroy evidence or move resources. He opened the door. Lyra, she's agreed. Begin preparation. The rest of the day became a blur. Lyra taught Eileen how to search without leaving obvious signs, how to memorize documents, recognize coded writing, notice patterns. Rowan taught self-defense, simple movements. Break a grip, create distance, run. Your mission is not to fight, Rowan said while showing her another escape technique. Your mission is staying alive long enough for us to reach you. He released her wrist. Loud, fast, then run like hell. Benedict taught her symbols, phrases, and organizational structures commonly used by extremist movements. Helena provided names and locations of Ashford allies in the southern marches who could shelter Eileen if everything failed. Through every lesson, Ash remained nearby. He sensed that something dangerous was coming, and he hated it. That evening, Eileen tried putting him to bed. Ash refused to release her. He knows you're leaving, Mira said softly. Shifter children notice more than people realize. Eileen knelt and wrapped her arms around him. I have to go away for a few days. Ash whined. But I'm coming back. She stroked his fur. I promise. His golden eyes watched her. I will always come back to you. Ash licked her face. Then he did something that broke Eileen's heart. He carefully took the rough little circlet he had made for her from her pocket and placed it on her head. Darius stood in the doorway. For protection. His voice was thick. He's giving you pack luck. Tears burned Eileen's eyes. She adjusted the little circlet. I'll keep it with me every moment. Ash pressed against her. That night, Eileen could not sleep. She lay beneath the blankets reviewing everything. Search methods, signals, escape routes, Ashford safe houses. A quiet knock came from the connecting door. Come in. Darius entered fully dressed. He looked as sleepless as Eileen felt. I thought you'd still be awake. Too much inside my head. Without discussion, Darius sat on the edge of her bed. Are you trying to change my mind? No. He looked down. You made your choice. Silence followed. I'm here, because I need to tell you something before you leave. Eileen's chest tightened. Just in case. In case I don't return? Don't say that. Darius took her hand. But yes. His fingers tightened. In case something goes wrong and I never get another opportunity. What do you need to say? He looked at her for a long moment. You changed everything. Eileen did not move. For me, for Ash, for this entire pack. His voice became quiet. 6 months ago, I was drowning. My mate was dead. Ash was consumed by grief. He looked away briefly. I ruled because it was my duty, nothing more. I was waiting to feel something other than emptiness. Then his eyes returned to Eileen. And then you appeared. He breathed. Suddenly there was light again. Hope. The possibility that perhaps we could become more than survivors. Darius, I'm not asking anything from you. He spoke quickly. I understand the imbalance. I'm king. You're beneath my authority. I'm technically your employer. All of it makes this complicated. His thumb moved over her hand. But before you go, you need to understand that you matter to me. Eileen's eyes filled, not as Ash's companion. His gaze did not leave hers. Not because you saved him, because you're Eileen. Tears escaped down her cheeks. Nobody had ever told her that simply existing could be enough. I'm terrified. The confession came suddenly. Of going home, of Margot, of discovering my father is involved. Her voice broke. Of failing you, failing Ash. You won't. Darius raised her hand and kissed her knuckles. The tenderness stole her breath. You're the strongest person I know. Then, and you're not alone. He held her gaze. Whatever happens in Thornhaven, remember that. You are not alone anymore. Darius remained beside her until exhaustion finally pulled Eileen into sleep. His hand was still holding hers. His presence stood between her and the nightmares. When she woke at dawn, he was gone. A small silver dagger rested on the nightstand in a leather sheath. Beside it was a note in Darius's bold handwriting. For protection, use it if necessary. Come home safely. We're waiting. D. Eileen strapped the dagger beneath her travel dress. She tucked Ash's handmade circlet safely into her pocket. Then she went to face Thornhaven. She had survived Margot once. She could survive her again. She had to. Chapter 9. Confronting the monster who raised you. The carriage journey to Thornhaven took 6 hours. 6 hours of Eileen's stomach tightening, while Rowan attempted increasingly useless conversation. You remember the signals? For the 3rd time, yes. Eileen recited them. If I'm in immediate danger, red candle in my bedroom window. Rowan nodded. If I find evidence, white candle. Yes. If I need extraction but it isn't urgent, I mark the edge of the village well. And where are we? At the inn. You, Corporal Jenna, and Private Tavern are merchants passing through Thornhaven. Rowan's expression became serious. We'll watch the house in shifts. Anything feels wrong, you signal us. I understand. I mean anything, Eileen. I understand. Knowing the plan was one thing. Following it became harder when the carriage climbed the final hill. Thornhaven appeared below. Exactly as Eileen remembered it. Small stone houses around the square, the fountain, the butcher shop where she had spent years cleaning blood. Nothing had changed, and yet it all looked different. Somewhere inside that peaceful village, people might be supporting extremists who wanted war between humans and shifters. Somewhere here, Margot had deliberately sent Eileen toward death. The carriage stopped outside the village. According to the plan, Eileen would walk the rest of the way alone. A frightened daughter coming home after discovering life beyond Thornhaven was too difficult. Rowan's group would arrive separately. Remember, Rowan looked at her before she climbed down. You're not alone. We're right here. Eileen nodded. She adjusted her small travel bag and walked. People recognized her immediately. Grandmother Hess gasped from her bread stall. Eileen? The old woman hurried forward. Child, is it really you? Hello, grandmother. Eileen forced a smile. I've come home. We heard you were dead. Hess touched Eileen's face. Margot said you'd disappeared into the forest and wolves killed you. Her eyes filled. Where have you been? It's complicated. Eileen glanced toward her house. Is my father home? He is. Poor man has been destroyed by grief. Go to him, child. News spread faster than Eileen could walk. By the time she reached Thomas's house, neighbors were already gathering, whispering, staring. Eileen ignored them. The familiar front door looked different now. Once it had been the entrance to her prison. She knocked. Footsteps approached. The door opened. Thomas Thorne stood there. Eileen almost did not recognize him. He looked 10 years older. Gray had spread through his hair. Exhaustion shadowed his eyes. His face had become thin. He froze. Eileen? His voice broke. Is it really? It's me, Father. Thomas pulled her into his arms. So suddenly Eileen nearly fell backward. His shoulders shook. He was crying. I thought you were dead. He held her tighter. Margot said you'd run away and the wolves. God, Eileen. I thought I'd lost you. Guilt twisted inside her. Whatever his failures, his grief was real. I'm sorry. I should have found a way to send word sooner. Where were you? What happened? Before Eileen could answer, a cold voice came from above. Well, Margot stood at the top of the staircase. The prodigal daughter returns. She looked exactly as Eileen remembered. Beautiful. golden hair perfectly arranged, expensive gown. Her expression shaped into delighted surprise. Her eyes held none of it. Eileen, what a relief. Margot descended gracefully. We were terrified when you disappeared. Where have you been? The Northern Territories. Eileen watched carefully. I was injured inside the Thornwood. They took me to the palace for treatment. Something flickered in Margot's eyes. Gone instantly. The palace? Her smile remained. How extraordinary. You'll have to tell us everything. She turned to Thomas. Don't leave the girl standing outside. Come in. The house had not changed. Polished floors. Expensive furniture Margot had demanded. The staircase toward Eileen's tiny bedroom. But Eileen saw it differently now. Not as home. A cage decorated beautifully enough that outsiders never noticed the bars. They sat together. Eileen told them the story they had prepared. She found a wolf cub trapped in the forest. Freed it. Was injured. Woke inside the palace. She omitted Ash's identity. Her title. Her relationship with Darius. The divided pack. How remarkable, Margot said. And they simply allowed you to return? I wanted my father to know I'm alive. Thomas gripped Eileen's hand. Will you stay? His eyes were still wet. Please. I know things were difficult. I've spoken with Margot. It will be different now. His voice became desperate. You're my daughter. You belong here. I can stay a few days. Eileen deliberately sounded uncertain. But I have responsibilities in the capital. I've been offered work. That part was not entirely false. Work? Margot's tone remained casual. Her eyes became sharp. What kind? Tutoring children. Benedict had prepared the lie. The palace staff need people teaching their children to read. I've been studying with one of their scholars. How ambitious. Margot's smile narrowed. And here I assumed you'd eventually return begging for your old room. Margot. Thomas's voice sharpened. Enough. I'm simply saying what everyone expected. Margot rose. I should check dinner. Vivian will be delighted you're alive. She's helping at the dressmaker today, but she'll return soon. She swept from the room. Thomas immediately turned toward Eileen. I'm sorry. His hands trembled. For everything. Eileen remained still. For not seeing. For not protecting you. He looked ashamed. I received the letter sent by the king. He told me what Margot had done. Thomas swallowed. I confronted her. She denied everything. Said you'd exaggerated. Said I was choosing you against her. His eyes pleaded with Eileen. I chose you. She blinked. I told Margot if she ever harmed you again, I'd divorce her. His voice strengthened. I swear I will protect you this time. The sincerity hurt. He meant it. Now, after evidence had been forced into his hands, where had that conviction been while Eileen was being starved and locked away? Thank you, Father. There was nothing else she could safely say. Vivian returned later. Her surprise was theatrical. Her calculating eyes were not. Dinner felt unreal. Margot played the gracious hostess while slipping small insults between polite sentences. Did you meet interesting people at the palace? Vivian asked. She leaned forward. Any young men? A few. I was mainly studying. How dull. Vivian pouted. If I'd been there, I'd have attended every ball and danced with every soldier. She smiled. Completely wasted on you. Vivian, Thomas warned. But the warning carried little force. After dinner, Eileen returned to her old bedroom. The tiny room had been cleaned. Fresh sheets covered the narrow bed. Flowers stood on the windowsill. Margot's work, no doubt. A performance for Thomas. Eileen waited. The house slowly became silent. Then she started searching. First her own room. Nothing. She entered the hallway. Her father's breathing came from his room. Lighter sounds from Vivian's. Margot occupied the largest bedroom at the end of the corridor. The bedroom that had once belonged to Eileen's mother. The door was locked. Of course. Eileen took the thin wire Rowan had given her and worked it into the mechanism exactly as he had taught her. 3 minutes felt like 30. Finally, click. The door opened. Silk bedding, expensive furniture, a wardrobe crowded with gowns. Eileen searched quickly. Drawers, under the mattress, inside boxes. Then the false bottom of the wardrobe, a hiding place Eileen had accidentally discovered years earlier while cleaning. Nothing. She kept searching. Her fingers brushed something hard behind a loose panel. Eileen pried it open. A leather-bound journal. Her heartbeat accelerated. She opened it. Dates, numbers, shipments, quantities, payments. At first, the writing made little sense. Then Benedict's lessons returned. Patterns. Look for repeated structures. Connections. And there it was. Repeated throughout the journal. A wolf's head split between black and white. The symbol of the divided pack. Eileen stopped breathing. Margot was not simply sympathetic to them. She was actively involved. Thomas's merchant connections were being used to transport supplies. The journal recorded destinations, payments, other cells, reports on palace information gathered from village gossip. Then Eileen found an entry from 3 months earlier. Trap acquired. Iron from T's shipment. Deploy Thornwood next week. Target royal spawn. Message will be clear. Royal spawn. Ash. Margot had known. She had helped. The trap was intended to kill a royal child. Eileen's vision blurred with rage. Then another piece fell into place. Margot had sent Eileen into that exact forest, knowing the rogues were there. Knowing a trap waited. Either Eileen would die, or she would be discovered near an injured shifter and blamed. Margot would win either way, except Eileen had saved Ash. She had ruined everything. A floorboard creaked behind her. Eileen turned. Margot stood in the doorway. A candelabra illuminated her face. Murder filled her eyes. You always were a nosy little rat. Her voice was almost gentle. I should have killed you years ago. Eileen's hand moved toward the dagger beneath her dress. Margot attacked first. They slammed into the wardrobe. The journal flew across the floor. You stupid girl! Margot's hands closed around Eileen's throat. You were supposed to die in that forest. Her grip tightened. Instead, you saved that beast's whelp and destroyed everything. Eileen clawed at her wrists. Do you understand how long we've planned this? How carefully we built the network? Air vanished. Darkness moved around Eileen's vision. The dagger. She stopped fighting Margot's hands, reached downward. Her fingers found leather. She tore the dagger free, drove it upward. Margot screamed. The blade struck her shoulder. Not fatal. Enough. Her hands released Eileen. Eileen stumbled away, dragging air into her burning throat. She snatched the journal from the floor. Window. Second story. A trellis ran down the wall. She could climb. Reach Rowan. Then the bedroom door burst wider. Thomas stood there. His eyes moved across the scene. Margot bleeding. Eileen holding Darius's dagger. The open journal. Eileen? What happened? She's divided pack. Eileen could barely speak through her injured throat. Father. She helped them try to kill the crown prince. Thomas went pale. She sent me into the forest because she hoped I'd die. Eileen lifted the journal. It's all here. Evidence, shipments, treason, lies. Margot screamed. Thomas, look at her. She attacked me. Her voice became hysterical. Those beasts at the palace corrupted her. She's trying to destroy this family. Thomas looked between them. Horror. Confusion. Father. Eileen extended the journal. Please, read it. Margot reached into her pocket. A whistle. Eileen saw it too late. Margot blew once, twice, 3 times. The sound was sharp and unnatural. Then footsteps answered outside. Many footsteps. Running toward the house. Eileen stared. You brought others. Margot smiled through the pain. Blood covered her shoulder. Did you honestly believe you were clever? The footsteps grew louder. We've watched the palace for weeks. We knew you'd eventually come. Eileen looked toward the open window, the only exit left. She ran. She hit the window at full speed. Glass broke around her. Her hands caught the trellis. Slipped. Caught again. Eileen climbed down as quickly as possible, ignoring splinters and cuts from shattered glass. She landed hard. Then, ran. Margot shouted behind her. More footsteps followed. Eileen reached the square. Captain Rowan! Her throat burned. Rowan, help! The inn door flew open. Rowan came out with his sword already drawn. Corporal Jenna and Private Tavern followed. Armed. Ready. How many? Rowan demanded. He moved between Eileen and the approaching shadows. 6. Maybe more. She shoved the journal toward him. Margot is one of them. I found everything. She tried to kill me. Figures emerged around the square. Men and women carrying weapons. They stopped when they saw Rowan's soldiers. Clearly, they had not expected military protection. Stand down. Rowan's command echoed across Thornhaven. By order of King Darius of the Northern Pax, you are under arrest for treason and conspiracy. One man spat on the ground. We don't answer to a beast-loving king. His eyes filled with hate. No true human should. Rowan raised his sword. Then answer to my blade. His voice was calm. Your choice. For one heartbeat, nobody moved. Then a conspirator lunged. The square exploded into fighting. Rowan and his soldiers moved with trained precision. Steel struck steel. Jenna dropped 2 attackers. Rowan disarmed another. Eileen backed against the inn wall, clutching the journal. But there were too many. Every time one conspirator fell, another seemed to emerge. Then a howl ripped through the night. Deep, resonant, unmistakably alpha. Eileen's heart stopped. Darius, a massive silver-black wolf, emerged from the edge of the forest. Golden eyes burned through the darkness. Behind him came an entire group of shifters in wolf form. The conspirators saw the Alpha King. They ran. They did not get far. Darius's pack moved with terrifying efficiency. They hunted every fleeing conspirator down, subdued rather than killed. But their restraint did nothing to hide what they could have done. Darius reached Eileen. He shifted into human form. He did not seem to care that the entire village could see him. He pulled her into his arms. His hands moved over her body, checking for wounds. You're hurt. His voice was rough. His fingers brushed the cuts from broken glass, then the bruises forming around her throat. His face changed. She hurt you. I'm okay. Eileen struggled to remain standing. I found the evidence. She held the journal. Everything. Margot. The supplies. Their network. I know. Darius cupped her face. I heard. You were supposed to signal me. I tried. She found me too quickly. Eileen's legs suddenly failed as the adrenaline disappeared. Darius caught her, lifted her. How did you know? I didn't trust the plan. He pressed his lips against her forehead. I followed at a distance with my personal guard. His arms tightened. I couldn't actually let you face this alone. Lyra approached in human form, carrying clothing for her king. Your Majesty, 11 conspirators captured, including Margot Thorne. Darius pulled on trousers while still keeping one arm around Eileen. Thomas Thorne remains inside the house. He's in shock but cooperating. Lyra held up the journal. This contains enough information to identify several cells throughout the territories. Arrest everyone named. Darius's voice became steel. I want every person connected with these records questioned. Eileen looked toward her old house. What happens to my father? Darius's expression softened. That depends on what the evidence says. He studied her. If he had no knowledge of the conspiracy, then his crime was blindness, not treason. Darius paused. What do you want? Eileen thought about Thomas. Absent, weak, genuinely grieving, manipulated by Margot, just as Eileen had been. But Thomas had possessed power Eileen never did, and he had refused to use it. Question him. Her voice steadied. If he's innocent, release him. Darius waited. But I don't want to see him again. Eileen looked back once. He made his choices. She swallowed. Now he lives with them. So be it. They remained in Thornhaven only long enough to secure prisoners and evidence. Then Darius lifted Eileen onto his horse. He mounted behind her. His pack surrounded them like a living shield. Eileen rested against his chest. Bruised, exhausted, alive. She had found the proof, survived Margot, and struck directly against the divided pack. I'm proud of you, Darius whispered into her hair. Then, terrified, furious that you were hurt, but proud, his arms tightened around her. You're stronger than I understood. I promised I'd come back. Eileen closed her eyes. For you and Ash. Her voice softened. I keep my promises. They rode toward the palace, toward safety, toward the cub waiting for her, toward whatever this new life would become. Eileen had faced her past and survived it. Now, perhaps, she could finally build a future. Chapter 10. From Ashes to Crown. The week after Thornhaven was controlled chaos. Interrogations continued day and night. Lyra's investigators worked through every prisoner and every name in Margot's journal. Margot faced execution for treason. On the third day, she finally broke. She gave them names. Dozens. Scattered across all 7 territories. The divided pack was larger than anyone had hoped, but also less unified than everyone feared. Many cells operated independently, without central leadership. That made them unpredictable. It also made them vulnerable once their identities were exposed. Eileen appeared before the council again. This time, she carried evidence rather than accusations. She presented the journal, described returning to Thornhaven, recounted Margot's attack. The nobles who had once doubted Eileen now remained silent. Some looked embarrassed, others openly respectful. Even Lady Selene approached afterward with a stiff but genuine apology. At the end of Eileen's testimony, Corvain addressed her. You've rendered these territories an extraordinary service. He looked toward the journal. The divided pack has remained a shadow for years. Then he looked at Eileen. You dragged that shadow into the light. The investigation mattered. The politics mattered. But the thing that weighed most heavily on Eileen was a letter from her father. She chose letters rather than meeting him face to face. Thomas wrote that royal investigators had cleared him of direct participation. He had not knowingly supported the divided pack, but he admitted his ignorance had been willful. He had failed to examine his own merchant routes, failed to see Margot, failed to see what happened to Eileen inside his own home. Thomas told her he did not expect forgiveness. He knew he had not earned it. He was selling his business, leaving Thornhaven, starting over somewhere else. Vivian would live with relatives from Margot's family in the Eastern Marches. Then Thomas finally answered the question Eileen had carried for years. Why had he never protected her? Fear. He had been afraid Margot would leave him, afraid of loneliness, afraid that acknowledging Eileen's suffering would force him to admit how badly he had failed. That fear had made him complicit. His letter ended with one truth. Eileen had deserved better than what he gave her. She read it 3 times, then placed it inside her desk. Maybe she would forgive Thomas one day. Maybe she never would. Either choice belonged to her now. That chapter was finished. The next one remained uncertain. You're thinking too hard again. Darius sat across from her inside his study. They were supposedly reviewing security reports. In reality, they had spent most of the evening in comfortable silence. Ash slept on the rug between them. Over the past week, this had become a ritual. A quiet hour after days filled with investigations and politics. I'm thinking about what comes next. Eileen looked toward Ash. The immediate danger is controlled. Darius waited. Ash is nearly healed. He barely limps. She smiled. He started playing with the other cubs too. Then the smile faded. My job here is almost finished. Your purpose was never limited to healing his leg. Darius placed aside the report he had been holding. You helped him survive grief. He's doing that now without me. Eileen looked toward the sleeping cub. He has friends. He sleeps all night. He laughs again. Her chest ached even as she smiled. That's what we wanted. Yes. Darius studied her. What about you? Eileen looked up. Are you healed? The question landed harder than expected. Was she? A month ago, Eileen had been exhausted by years of abuse, expecting nothing beyond survival. Now she carried a noble name, a silver star, a home inside a palace. People cared whether she ate, whether she slept, whether she was safe. But without Ash desperately needing her, Eileen suddenly felt adrift. Saving him had given her a clear purpose. Who was she when nobody needed saving? I don't know, she answered honestly. I don't know who I am if there isn't a crisis. Darius stood and moved toward the window. Then perhaps it's time to discover that. He looked toward the garden. Helena believes you should consider diplomatic training. Eileen blinked. Diplomacy? The territories need people who understand both human and shifter cultures. You're unusually qualified. I'm barely literate. You've studied for 1 month and learned what many people require a year to understand. Darius looked back. Benedict says languages come naturally to you. You're already conversational in pack speech. Most humans never reach that level. He continued. If diplomacy doesn't interest you, there are other choices. Healing? Like your mother. Scholarship? Certainly. He smiled faintly. Lyra even thinks you'd have instincts for military strategy. You're unusually good at reading people. Eileen narrowed her eyes. You've been planning my future, thinking of ways to keep you here. The answer was so direct that Eileen fell silent. Darius's expression became carefully controlled. Because the alternative is you leaving. He looked toward her. And I'm not prepared for that. Eileen rose. She joined him beside the window. Below, Ash was awake now, tumbling through autumn leaves with 3 other cubs, laughing in the carefree way a child should. Why? Darius looked at her. Why do you care whether I'm the one who stays? She turned. You could employ hundreds of tutors, thousands of healers, diplomats, scholars. Her voice softened. Why me? Darius did not answer immediately. Seconds passed. Then he turned toward her completely. Raw emotion filled his golden eyes. Because I'm falling in love with you. And I don't know how to stop. Eileen felt the world tilt. That's... Her voice disappeared. You can't. She shook her head. I'm nobody. I'm only... Don't. Darius stepped closer. One hand cupped her cheek. Never make yourself small like that here. His eyes held hers. Not with me. He began slowly. You're the woman who fought rogues for my son. His thumb moved across her skin. The woman who stood before 200 nobles and defended herself with truth. Another breath. The woman who walked willingly back into the home of her abuser because innocent people needed what only she could find. His voice softened. You're brave, intelligent, kind. Then, you made my son laugh again. His eyes became vulnerable. And somehow you made me feel things I believed had died with my mate. Darius shook his head. So no. He moved closer. You're not nobody. His voice dropped almost to a whisper. You're everything. Tears burned Eileen's eyes. I don't know how to do this. I know. I've never. Her voice failed. Nobody has ever. I know. Darius brought his other hand to her face. Strong hands. Gentle touch. We don't have to rush. He held her as though she were something fragile without ever making her feel weak. We learn together. He paused. And if you don't want this, if I've misunderstood everything, tell me. His expression tightened. We return to what we were. I won't punish you. I won't take anything away. Darius breathed. But I needed you to know why the thought of you leaving has become unbearable. Eileen's heart hammered. She remembered the forest. The trap. The terrified cub. The king who had offered safety without demanding obedience. Evening conversations. Quiet touches. The way Darius watched her when he believed she did not notice. As though she were something precious. Then Ash. His unconditional trust. Pack. Belonging. A life larger than survival. I'm scared. So am I. What if I'm not enough? Eileen's voice trembled. What if I hurt you, or Ash? What if I fail? Darius rested his forehead against hers. What if you don't? She closed her eyes. What if instead of imagining every disaster, we simply try? His breath warmed her lips. I don't know how to be loved. Eileen whispered the truth. I don't know whether I'm capable of it. Then I'll teach you. Darius did not close the final distance. He waited. The same way you taught Ash how to heal. His voice became softer. We'll learn together. The choice belonged to Eileen, so she made it. She leaned forward. Her lips touched his. Tentative. Testing. Darius made a low sound in his throat and drew her closer. The kiss deepened. It felt terrifying. Safe. Like falling and flying at once. When they finally separated, both were breathing unevenly. Darius rested his forehead against hers. Stay. He whispered the word. Not as Ash's companion. His arms remained around her. Not as an employee, not because you owe anything. He looked into her eyes. Stay, because you want to. A pause. Choose this. Then, choose us. Eileen smiled through tears. I'm choosing you. She corrected him. Both of you. Darius's eyes softened. For how long? As long as you'll have me. Eileen swallowed. Forever. Darius smiled. Not the guarded half-smile Eileen had seen before. A real smile. Good. He kissed her forehead. Because I'm not letting go. The Autumn Council concluded 3 days later. For the first time in years, fear of a common enemy forced unusual cooperation among the 7 territories. Money was allocated to security. Programs were created to fight extremist ideology. New initiatives were proposed to strengthen relationships between humans and shifters. Then Darius surprised everyone, including Eileen. Before the assembled council, he announced the creation of a new office, Ambassador of Integration. The ambassador would promote cooperation between human communities and shifter packs. Darius offered the position to Eileen. You've already proven you can stand between both worlds. His voice carried through the council chamber. You understand what it means to be viewed as an outsider by both. He looked directly at her. And through courage and integrity, you've earned the respect of this council. Eileen stood before 200 nobles. The silver star rested against her chest. Ash's rough little circlet was with her. A month earlier, she could barely write her name. Now a king was asking her to help shape the future of 7 territories. I accept. Whispers spread. Eileen continued. On one condition. More whispers. It was almost rude to negotiate with a king in public. Darius merely smiled. Name it. I want education included in the position. The room quieted. I want schools established in border settlements. She looked across the nobles. Places where human and shifter children learn together while they're young. Corvain leaned forward. Eileen continued. Fear grows easily from ignorance. Her voice strengthened. So we fight ignorance with knowledge. Discussion erupted. Corvain nodded thoughtfully. Expensive, but potentially effective. I'll fund the program personally if necessary, Darius said. He looked at Eileen. Lady Eileen's condition is accepted. Then formally, let the record show that the office of Ambassador of Integration is established and filled effective immediately. The official announcement gave way to celebration. That night, the gathering in the royal wing was smaller. Helena, Lyra, Rowan, Benedict, a handful of others who had somehow become family within one extraordinary month. Ash attended too. He wore his formal collar and sat proudly at Eileen's feet. He had grown quickly, bigger, stronger, more confident. Soon he would be old enough to take human form and finally speak everything stored inside his clever mind. To beginnings. Helena lifted her glass. And to finding family where we never expected it. They drank, talked, laughed until late. Eventually everyone departed. Eileen and Darius remained alone on the balcony above the thornwood. You know court politics will eventually expect us to marry. Darius sounded almost casual. Eileen's heart skipped. Was that a proposal? Not yet. He wrapped his arms around her from behind. You aren't ready. A pause. Neither am I. He rested his chin near her hair. We've only begun. Eileen relaxed against him. But eventually, when we're both ready. His voice softened. I want you as my mate. Eileen stopped breathing. My partner. Then, my queen. That's considerable pressure. You fought 3 rogues with a stick. She could hear the smile in his voice. I think you'll survive court politics. He kissed her hair. But there is no hurry. His arms tightened. We have time. What if the council objects? What if? Darius turned her around. What if the council just watched you negotiate conditions with its alpha king and win? Eileen laughed softly. They're not going to object. His gold eyes warmed. They may actually be frightened of you now. Then his expression became serious. Stop searching for reasons happiness has to fail. He touched her cheek. Just be here. With me. With Ash. Eileen looked at the man before her. The alpha king who had protected her. The grieving father whose son she had saved. The person who had somehow fallen in love with the unwanted butcher's daughter from Thornhaven. Okay. Her voice was soft. I'll be here. Good. Darius kissed her slowly, warmly. A promise rather than a demand. Because you're Pack now. His forehead touched hers. And Pack means forever. 6 months later, on the first morning of spring, Eileen stood inside her office in the palace's diplomatic wing. Books covered the shelves. Maps filled the walls. Letters from territories across the kingdom waited on her desk. She had just returned from opening the first integrated border school. Human and shifter children were now learning together there. The work was difficult. Some communities resisted. Progress came slowly. But bridges were being built. A knock sounded. Ash burst through the door. He was finally able to take human form. A lanky 7-year-old with his father's golden eyes and a smile bright enough to change an entire room. Eileen! He rushed toward her. Guess what? What? Father says I can begin sword training next month. He grinned. I'm going to become the greatest warrior in all 7 territories. I'm sure you will. Eileen hugged him. But you'll continue your reading lessons too. Ash's face fell. Do I have to? Yes. Fine. His grin returned. Father also told me dinner is ready. He hesitated dramatically. And that he loves you. He made me promise to say that exactly, even though it's embarrassing. Eileen laughed. Tell him I love him too. I'll be there in 5 minutes. Ash raced away. His voice echoed along the corridor. Eileen remained still for a moment. She looked around her office. At the work, the purpose, the family she had chosen, 3 objects rested on her desk: the silver star of valor, Ash's rough handmade circlet, and something newer. A betrothal ring. Darius had proposed beneath the stars 2 weeks earlier. Their wedding was planned for midsummer, a marriage between 2 people, and, symbolically, another bridge between humans and shifters. Eileen picked up the ring. She slid it onto her finger. It felt solid, real, earned. She had entered the thornwood searching for herbs. She had found a destiny. She saved a wolf cub, and found a family. She had lived as someone nobody valued. Now she had become someone capable of changing lives. Eileen walked toward the dining hall. Darius and Ash were waiting. Her pack, her family. She had collapsed after saving a wolf cub from rogues. When she woke, she had unknowingly begun saving herself too. Not every prison had visible walls. Not every escape required running. Sometimes salvation began with one impossible decision to be brave when bravery mattered. Sometimes the person who believed she deserved nothing discovered that she deserved far more than she had ever imagined. And sometimes an unwanted daughter stood at the beginning of a road that would one day lead to a crown. Epilogue. 5 years later, spring flowers covered the thornwood. Eileen walked its paths with the easy confidence that came from years of familiarity. Ash walked beside her. Now 12, he was already showing signs of the powerful alpha he would become. He talked almost continuously about his coming trials. And after that, I'll finally receive an official guard rank. His excitement filled his voice. Father says I'm ready. Ash looked at Eileen. Do you think I am? Eileen smiled. I think you've been ready since the day you stood on 3 legs and tried to protect me. Ash grinned. But the trials aren't only about fighting skill. His expression became more serious. They're about judgment, knowing when to fight and when mercy is stronger. I know. He looked toward her. You taught me that. Then, both of you did. They continued until they reached a familiar clearing, the same clearing where Eileen had once found a small cub bleeding inside an iron trap. A stone memorial now stood there. Words had been carved across its surface. Here, courage bridged 2 worlds. Here, a life was saved and a future was born. Here, we learned that kindness is not weakness, and family is not always blood. Ash became quiet. Do you ever think about what would have happened if you'd kept walking? Eileen looked around the clearing. Every day. She touched his shoulder. And every day I'm grateful I didn't. Her voice softened. You gave me a life worth living, Ash. You and your father. Ash hugged her. You gave us one too. He was almost Eileen's height already, growing far too quickly. Then he said quietly, You're the best mother I could have asked for. Eileen's eyes filled. She had never asked Ash to call her his mother. She would never try to erase the woman who gave birth to him. Ash remembered pieces of his first mother. Those memories deserved their place. Still, hearing the word meant everything. Come on. Eileen composed herself. Your father is waiting, and you know how he behaves when we're late to family dinner. Together they walked toward the palace. Mother and son. Human and shifter. Proof that love could cross boundaries fear had built. Darius waited inside the royal chambers. Their 2-year-old daughter Catherine was with him, named after Eileen's mother. She had Eileen's dark hair, Darius's golden eyes. The moment Catherine saw Eileen, she toddled toward her with absolute faith that she would be caught. Mama. Eileen lifted her. Catherine squealed, while Eileen kissed her round cheeks. Darius wrapped his arms around both of them, completing the circle. Another school opened today, Eileen told him. Western Reaches. Darius smiled. That makes 17. 17. 17 bridges. He kissed her forehead. How many more do you need? As many as it takes. Eileen looked into his eyes. until every human and shifter child can grow without fearing the other. Her voice became firm. Until the divided pack's ideology becomes nothing except an ugly memory. Then we'll keep building. Darius held her closer. All of us. Family, Ash said. Then he grinned. Pack. Eileen smiled. Same thing. And she meant it. The unwanted girl had finally found where she belonged. The woman who had been broken had become whole. And the queen who began with nothing now possessed everything that had ever truly mattered. Love, purpose. Family, home. Eileen had saved a wolf cub, and in saving him, she had saved herself. Perhaps that was where Eileen's story ended, or perhaps it was only another beginning.